said I won't be back in a while. Don't wait. Already packed her bags, called a cab, made space. And she said I won't answer if you call me when you're lonely. I guess I let her go. Never mind, it's too late. But I can't believe I let you slip. I think about it 7 days a week, and this just can't be how it's supposed to end.
Good evening. How are you guys doing? How is everybody?
Hopefully more rested than what we are.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we're a little bit exhausted. We got a few stories to tell you. Thank you everybody for being here this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for being here. To Maud, we appreciate you very much. And to everybody else in the chat, welcome. So let's get started. Now, real quick, this is just for fun. Before we get started on this, I want to show you guys this. I came home this evening and my granddaughter lives here and she always has wanted to be a YouTuber. And she shows me this video on her little tablet that she had made. And I want to show you guys this because I think it's the sweetest thing in the world. Give me just a minute. You can talk for a minute while I pull it up if you want.
Fill in the empty space. There's I think there are 184 that are watching us right now. Lots in the chat. Thank you guys all for being with us tonight. It has been a long couple of days. Carrie and I headed out to Guymon yesterday. Shenanigans started right away because obviously Carrie's luck runs that way. So we don't take Carrie gambling to Vegas ever. Oh my gosh, is that the video?
Yeah, so this is my little 5-year-old granddaughter. Normally I won't show kids on here, but you know what? If you come for my grandkids, you're going to have something else to deal with. So I'm not too worried about it.
Just a reminder, we do true crime. So I'm just saying.
Yes. So, but you guys got to listen to this. I couldn't wait to share it with everybody. She is definitely my little doll.
My brother, because they don't live here, don't worry about my hair and stuff. Just listen to my song. I love when you subscribe. I have like 100 subscribers, maybe. I don't know yet. I love you guys. You're the best, and I hope you have a great day when this is over. And I hope you have a great night too. An afternoon in the morning, a night, and good morning in the morning. So let's get started. So let's get started. I love you guys. I love you guys. I love you guys. I love you. I love you guys. I love you guys. I love you guys. I love you.
I think that she needs to like take over. Oh my goodness. I just like died when she showed me that. I love it, love it, love it. She thinks she has a YouTube channel already and she has 100 subs if you didn't catch that. So anyway, I really wanted to share that with you guys. So let's talk about how this started, Tara.
Oh God.
What all went down. Tara's absolutely correct. I have the worst luck in the world. So we both headed there yesterday afternoon to Guymon. We were actually meeting up in Hugoton first.
Yes.
Tara wanted to see, the area where the car is bound, Four Corners, that kind of thing. So I left here about 1 o'clock, I think, yesterday afternoon. And we finally met up out there in Hugoton, and it was Tara and Joe and myself and my husband. And we got going, and as soon as we took off, a storm came in, and I mean, it poured rain. We couldn't see anything.
Oh, wait, no, hold on. You couldn't. She was the lead car. Let's clarify a few things. She was the lead car in her fancy dancy little hot rod car, the yellow bee stinger thing that you can see from 3 miles away. She's the lead car getting thrown around on the road in this terrible storm coming in. I'm right behind her. I'm getting thrown around, and Joe's got his big ass truck. He should have been the one leading because he could have led the way for us. But man, as we were heading south on 95 before we hit 412, it's like, man, if we can just get to 412, we'll be fine. We'll beat the storm to Guymon, and it worked out. But man, oh God, we should have just gone to Guymon to begin with.
Yeah, so by the time we got, and I'm sorry about my voice, it's really been rough last few days with it, or week, actually, it was like this last week. But when we got to where their car was found, it was pouring down so much that we couldn't even get video of it. So Tara didn't really get to see much. You can see the memorial, even with that pouring rain right from the highway. And then we did make it over to Four Corners. Again, it was raining there. And then from there, we went on to Guymon. So I think we got back finally at our hotel like 9 o'clock last night.
Yeah, because of the wonderful things that happened to us. So my car ran beautifully. I live in the Wichita area, so I'm about a 4.5-hour drive from Hugoton. I took an alternate route to avoid all the construction, get to Hugoton, everything is fine. We hit that storm. Okay, slight drawback, not a big deal. We get to Guymon, and we're at this gas station. We go inside to grab a couple things before heading to check into the hotel. And Carrie's like, hey, follow me. I'm like, no big deal. And my car started beautifully, sounded great. It would not go into gear. It's automatic. And I couldn't get the gear shift to it would move, but it wouldn't take the transmission with it. And so I was stuck in park. So I couldn't even get it into neutral to roll it, which is be a very important point for later on. And so we had to leave the car there. We go back after the court hearing, and it's like, okay, so let's go get a tow trailer. Joe thankfully had Joe had his big ass truck. And I asked him, can you tow me back? And he's, after he gave me some crap for it, he's like, yes, absolutely. Guymon didn't have any tow dollies for our car. So we had to go back to Hugoton, get a tow dolly. Their systems are all down. So technically they probably should not have been able to rent that thing to me, but they did. They made it work. We get down to Guymon and we try all the tricks and do all the Googling, but we can't get that car into neutral. I call my beau and he's like, I don't know how to help you, babe. Call the Ford dealership. Maybe they know the trick. Because we're all Googling, trying to figure out how to get past this damn thing. And the Ford dealership's like, oh, okay, so you're not going to get it out of neutral. You're not going to get out of park. It's stuck in neutral. We'll be there in 10 minutes. It's a recall fix. We can do this. We've been at this 4 hours, only to have this guy show up and fix it in 10 minutes. Be like, have a nice day.
Yeah, but that wasn't until after court today.
Yeah,
So-
I did not leave Guymon until almost 2:45. Joe and I did not leave Guymon until almost 2:45.
Yes,
so
and
it's
Tara just got home like what, 7:30 or so, maybe 45 minutes ago.
7:45.
So
I've been home for an hour.
That's
This is
why
why
we
I'm
had to
drinking.
change the time. So we're really sorry, but I wanted to give her like a minute to get into her house and get her something to drink and things like that. So thank you guys for waiting.
Was it a key in my console? No, it's a recall, Amy, that it's part of the Ford products. It's this thing on the gear shifter that just fails after so many thousands of miles. And mine just happened to fail when I got connected to Carrie in Guymon, because that's how Carrie's luck
Always
runs.
me. Always. Thank you, Ashley. We'll see you later, hon.
Yes, we will see you later.
So yeah, and then this morning we got up. We had plans to be at the courthouse at 8, as usual. I run late. I think I got there at 8:10. My husband had actually taken my car this morning and ran over to the convenience store to get me a Gatorade. And Tara thought I had already left and just gone onto the courthouse.
Yep.
Like I would just leave her and not say something. But
well,
anyway,
my phone was not working this morning on top of that. So my beau was freaking out because I'm not returning text to him, and he had my location in case bad things happened. And my location was not updating. So I'm like, damn it, she's probably already gone. Like, she probably thought Tara's not answering me or whatever. And so Joe and I just left.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one.
So we got to the courthouse and we got there. I think I got there about 8:10 or so. It was not packed at all at that point.
No.
There was just probably a few people inside. And so we'll what we want to do is share our experience. It was the first time that we were in one of the hearings. It was a big hearing, from, what we think it was a pretty big hearing.
Huge. It was huge.
Yeah, there was something really interesting that happened at the end of it that I'm so glad that we didn't just take off, because they actually brought us back into the courtroom unexpectedly. So we just want to share our experiences there, what we saw in the courtroom, some of the behaviors that we observed. Now, those are obviously just our opinions. But I tried to be very neutral on like watching what each of the defendants were doing, how they were acting, that kind of thing. And then we'll go over the new court order that was done today, as well as a little bit more about Paul Grice.
Yes. Lots happened. Lots have happened. So where do you want to start at the
So if there's anybody new, because there's a lot of new people that are just finding out about this case.
Yeah.
And as it gets closer to the trial, more and more people are going to hear about it. More and more YouTube creators and stuff are going to start covering it. So I'm going to let Tara just kind of recap the case for those that may be new to it or watch it on the replay and don't know anything about it. We have the large Facebook group that's got 20,000 members. And every day there are new people coming into it, and people asking questions. So we know there's a lot of new people to this case. So if you want to just kind of explain real quick, recap what all has occurred.
Sure can. So earlier this year on March 30th, 31st. It must be the 30th.
It's the 30th. I have it on the screen if you can see it.
Okay, I was looking at that, but it didn't feel right. Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley head down to Eva, Oklahoma to pick up Veronica's children for a birthday party in Hugoton. And they did not make it back in a timely fashion. Family members started looking for them, and they were reported missing after law enforcement was involved. So the children at that time were living with Tifany Adams, which is the kids' paternal grandmother. You can also consider her Veronica's ex-mother-in-law. So the car is found. It's found with personal belongings. It's found on a 2-track road. So it's off of Highway 95, off of L Road on a 2-track road where it does not belong. All of the personal effects are there, it looks like. And there is signs of but what appears to be foul play or a major scene, something bad, nefarious has happened. So law enforcement begins their investigation immediately because Cimarron and Texas County, their sheriff's departments, their law enforcement agencies don't necessarily have the manpower for this kind of investigation. So OSBI is brought in. On Monday, April 1st, volunteer search efforts are getting underway. And it's important for the story to understand those are volunteer search efforts versus law enforcement. That's not to say law enforcement wasn't doing their job, but there is a reason why they were doing what they were doing, and it has to do with where the car was found. Saturday, April 13th, there are 4 arrests in connection to the disappearance. Those arrests are Tifany Adams, Tad Cullum, Cora Twombly, and Cole Twombly. Cora and Cole are married. Tad and Tifany have been in a relationship of sorts for several years. On that same day of the arrest, Veronica and Jilian's remains are found on property that Tad Cullum was renting and had previously done some digging work the night before with a skid steer. So then on Sunday, April 21st, there is a 5th arrest in connection to the disappearance of Veronica and Jilian, and that would be Paul Grice. And there is a huge story attached to that, and a big part, what happened with him early on in this case and where he's at today, in my theory, are connected. And so we're going to get into some of that. Since the arrest, there have been hearing after hearing to push this case forward. Today, there were some stall attempts. So that is where we are at. And today was the first time that Carrie and I got to attend a court hearing. So it was quite the show. Not on the drama level in terms of people who were attending, but the interaction between the attorneys and the judge were very interesting and telling as far as I'm concerned. Oh, Carrie's on mute. I didn't see that, so I'll keep talking. I don't know what she's doing.
Okay.
Oh, there
Okay.
she is. You go on mute, and I'm like, oh, I'll just carry the show notes. We'll just keep going. It's fine. Oh, so this is great footage.
Yeah, so while we went inside, I had my husband stand outside. Now he's no videographer. I had to like tell him 100 times, make sure you turn the camera sideways. You know, he's not real good at this, but he did us good today. And so this is the video that he did get outside of the courtroom. And I don't think there wasn't any sound really. Whoa, what happened
I
here?
don't think so. Oh, it didn't do it for, okay, so I see. Hold on. I'm gonna refresh. Hold on. That was me that did that. So there, you said there's no sound to this, Carrie? It doesn't sound like
There's not. I don't think so.
What we're seeing here is that's it. The courthouse in Guymon sits on the corner in what it appears to be like a historic downtown area. And the parking lot opens to one street and then again on the other street. I didn't catch my cardinal directions there. Forgive me for that. So this part of the parking lot is blocked off so that only law enforcement can bring in the defendant. So right there was Tad Cullum. He was walked in first. Now, they did not announce in the courtroom that anybody was coming in. And so when Tad Cullum walked in first, you were kind of caught off guard. You weren't expecting it. I expected, 9 o'clock. That's when they start showing up. They were there seated by 9. There is Cora Twombly. She was escorted in second. And then third in the lineup, if memory serves, was Cole Twombly. And he'll show up on screen here in just a moment. Tifany was escorted in 4th, and then Paul Grice 5th. Now, I don't know if the order is important or not. I don't know that they walk them in the same order every time. But that is how they came into the courtroom, and it aligns with them being unloaded from the vehicles. They're escorted in with 1 law enforcement personnel. That law enforcement personnel does stay in the courtroom the entire time, along with a handful of others. The sheriff, Cimarron, Texas County, was present for the entire ordeal. And I believe there was, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a state police officer?
Yeah, so inside the courtroom, there was a state police officer that was right outside the courtroom. There was a few deputy sheriffs outside the courtroom. I counted a total of 8 deputy sheriffs and the sheriff in the courtroom.
Yes.
Now, my husband also said there was about that many outside during the
Yes.
entire hearing,
And
they were walking around. So they had some that were parked out there, and then they also had some deputies that were walking around the courthouse, and they actually did go up to my husband and ask him what he was doing there. So they were checking out everybody. There was a drone. I don't know if it's the sheriff's department's drone. And I think that might be that green. I don't know what that green was, but I think that might have been the drone. But the drone flew the entire time, and including after we're leaving the courthouse, that drone was still flying. And then it just kind of disappeared, went on top. It looked like on top of the courthouse. But definitely there was a lot of law enforcement presence.
Yes.
I felt absolutely safe 100% in that courtroom. Like, I mean, and I've heard how small it is. And yeah, it's a small courtroom, but I really expected it to be much smaller than, what we'd kind of heard. It was not packed, surprisingly.
No, it was well attended, but not packed.
Yes,
it was well attended. There was it wasn't like standing room required. We were searched upon entry. They didn't let folks in until about 8:30, and then once you stepped up, anybody could go in as long as you weren't carrying your cell phone. I left my person's cell phone, everything out in my car, but they did use a metal detecting wand to search everybody as they came in, but there was no pat down, so it was very safe, very comfortable. Everybody we talked to, everybody we saw had a smile on their face, including law enforcement. So it was, and everybody did ask, what are you doing here? But it wasn't, like they were interrogating you. It was, they're trying to be as kosher and courteous as possible, but still trying to get their job done.
Yeah, and they were, we were able to take in a pen and paper, of course, no phone,
Hmm.
no Apple Watches. I didn't take in my purse, nothing like that. They do wand everybody down, going in. And like I said, there's a presence inside the courthouse and in the
Yeah.
courtroom. So very secure is how I felt. Very secure. Um,
So there's a question up front from Georgia OKC. Are they still not able to go talk to? I don't think so. They did. They
no,
kept these folks separate, even in the courtroom. It looks like they can only speak to their attorneys, and that was it. They were not. And we'll get into their mannerisms, their body language. That was something I paid very specific attention to. I was sitting with family and could ask questions, to get kind of a history on some of the body language, because there's a family member who also watches the body language closely. So, but what's on the screen now, Carrie, you did an outstanding job with this. This is super, super cool.
yeah, I wanted you guys to be able to see the layout inside the courtroom. So behind where it says Tiffany and State, obviously that is where the public would sit. The front left-hand side, the very front row was investigators. There was an OSBI agent. We believe there might have been a PI there. But there was what, three, I believe, sitting there, Tara. And then Tiffany, one of her female attorneys, was also sitting there.
Yes.
And that's only because there wasn't another chair. They offered her one. She said, no, I'm good.
Yep.
Then on the front right row was media podcasters. So there was myself, a reporter from the Wichita News was next to me. There was another gal, and then another one on the end. So there was only four of us sitting there in the front. Tara, sat back on the second row so that she could sit with, some family members and stuff. Tad's mom was there. She actually sat on the same row that Tara
Yep.
and Veronica's family members were sitting on. She was there by herself.
Yeah.
Let's
She
see.
was courteous. She didn't extend herself to anybody. She was there to support her son. That was very clear.
Yeah.
She and I made eye contact. She smiled kindly and just kind of kept walking on. So it doesn't. She didn't have an RBF.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
When
she didn't
she
have any
walked
kind
in,
of.
she kinda grinned at me as well,
Yeah.
and she doesn't know who I am from Adam, so,
No.
she did, but she was very sullen. She didn't have much expression or emotion that I noticed, very
Yeah.
much just there for her son, and that's really about all we can say about it because
Yeah.
there just wasn't much to that. There was family members of Cole or Cora's. I must say it's Cole because the gentleman looks just like Cole. But we're not real sure who it was. It was him and who I'd assume is maybe his wife. But they were there. And then I think just some other people that lived in the community, possibly.
Yeah, I think there was and Joe, if I don't remember correctly, I believe there was a couple with Arizona plates there. So I'm not sure, if they just are a transplant. I doubt they actually drove up from Arizona for this hearing. But it does appear that, from what I understand from the family that I sat with on the other side of the court, room, were representatives of some sort of Cole and or Cora Twombly.
Yes.
Yes, Margaret. Yes, Tad and Cole were back behind Paul. And thinking about it now, Carrie, I think that was by design.
I think it was as well. Absolutely think it was as well.
Yeah. So it's.
Um,
But that is what you see there. So you see the judge's desk at the top where it says courtroom layout. There was two entry points, where you see the Carrie Moody icons. There's basically entry points to the courtroom for the defendants and the judge and other court employees, court officers. We entered from, off to the bottom right corner. Essentially, that's where the galley could enter into. And Carrie was sitting behind the state side, and I was behind the Tifany side. So, but you could see each of them as they walked in. And I can honestly say, from those that we've heard from in the past about watching these folks walk in, nailed it. Absolutely nailed the expression, the body language, who's remorseful, who's not, who doesn't give a damn, who thinks it's funny.
right.
It
Yeah.
is really I thought it would be surreal, Carrie, just to be in the room with them. and see them, it kind of brings a humanizing factor to something that, I work remotely. You've been in the area. However, that wasn't the problem. It was seeing their interaction with their attorneys, the way that they presented themselves. Um, that was the disturbing part. It really
Yeah.
was.
And yep, I hope that you get feeling a little better. Don't worry at all, though. We're happy when you are here.
Yes, absolutely.
So they were obviously handcuffed at their wrists. They were also handcuffed shackled at the ankles. Um, each one of them had a deputy sheriff behind them. Yeah, so it was absolutely, it just felt secure. I'll just put it that way.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Now
There is
I'm
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
interrupt you real quick. I
Yeah.
just got a message from somebody as we're talking about the representatives from the possible Twombly side.
Mhm.
There's a possibility that it was probably Cora's mom that may have been there. There was a gentleman there, Carrie, that you said, I missed the gentleman that looked just like
Yeah, he
Cole.
looks so
Was he
much like
younger or older?
no, but he looked like he might be around Cole's
Oh,
age.
okay.
So,
Okay.
like,
So it's from what I'm getting from this individual, it probably is those closer relatives of the Twombly's. Um, so that's good to know, because that was what the family I was sitting with, that's what they assumed. If they don't recognize the individuals in the courtroom, the family I was sitting with will not approach anybody else. They tried to avoid the quote unquote other side, rightfully so. I can understand why somebody would not want to engage necessarily.
yes, and, Alive in the 405 said, "I have heard Cole's attorney isn't the most professional as Cole."
Which
That's
one?
what we had heard as well.
Which one? He has
Yeah,
two.
he has 2 female
Yeah,
attorneys. I didn't see anything today that I felt was unprofessional.
I
Um,
did.
I
I
I did see one with Tad, so you tell what you saw with Cole.
So Cole had one of his female attorneys on either side of him. There was one and the family member I sat with was able to confirm this behavior occurs every hearing. There was that special kind of eye contact, like it was a little too close, a little too personal of eye contact. There was a lot of wasn't in the head rubbing. Somebody had asked to update us if Cole got another head massage while in the courtroom. No, he did not. However, the attorney he was with, and this is all, we don't hear their conversations. Keep that in mind. We can only go off of what we think we are interpreting. It just looked like they were more than professional. I'll put it that way. I know it was a small courtroom. One attorney didn't see the need to be touching knee to knee. The other one seemed to be sitting so close they were knee to knee. And what was interesting is the interaction between Cole and his attorney, one of his female attorneys, was taking place. Cora was not a happy camper. Her body language kept shifting. She minimized her facial expressions, but she would look up, look down. The responses, her body language it appeared to be a response to how Cole was interacting with his attorney. And the family member that I was seated with said that's a very common thing. It looks like a lot of jealousy or upset or discomfort on Cora's side. So this is all, again, observation. This is not fact. This is just what we think we are interpreting. And this was just my first time in the courtroom watching these folks. So while he did not get the head massage, probably because everybody pointed that out last time, it does look like they have it looks like she understands Cole. Let's put it
Right.
that way.
Definitely. I did catch him because I wrote it in my notes. I did catch Cole staring at Cora briefly, but she was not looking back at him. For the most part, Cora kept her head down for the most part.
She did, and I don't think she kept her head down out of as much, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. Should not have done this. It was more like, dang it, I got caught. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Like, there was no remorse in her expression at all. She seemed more concerned with Cole. When he wasn't staring at her, she was watching him. That I did note. Only one of them showed any kind of remorse in that courtroom. Tifany was just like, okay, it's another day in the neighborhood, until things didn't go her way. And then you could tell she got mad. But
Right, and another thing I noticed too, I caught, when Tad was sitting down. Of course, we couldn't see Tiffany's face, we only saw the back of her head. We saw her walk in. I
mhm,
will say she looked much better today than we've seen previously. Her hair looked neat. Of course, she didn't have any makeup on or anything like that. You know, a lot of us don't look all that great without the makeup, the Facebook filters, and all that stuff, but she really didn't look as bad as she has in the past, I didn't think, but I did catch Tad look over at her and he smiled at her. So I don't know what her response was, but he did smile at Tiffany.
yeah, and I missed his smile there, but I did see the daggers that he was throwing in the gallery, between
Yes,
you and me. He has
yes,
a look about him. I don't know him very well, so I don't know if this is his version of RBF. But he
right.
does not have a kind-looking face when he's even behind. No, I did see him smile once. I take that back. I did see him smile once, but it was due to whatever he and his attorney were
Yeah,
talking
him
about.
and his attorney laughed, and I'll get to that too.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah, and so this is kind of interesting because I heard somebody else that was in the courtroom felt the same way today. I have anxiety as well as this other woman that was seated there in the front row. And, I did great until Tad was in there, and keep in mind, we were on the ground during that time. We were chased by unknown people a couple times, we were followed. So, never knowing who was that did that. We always assumed that it was probably one of them or, somebody that knows them, something like that. Tad was definitely throwing daggers in that courtroom at the galley,
Yes.
and, I turned around to Joe and I said, "I'm having an anxiety attack." It was a little bit it was just kind of an uneasy feeling, but it wasn't because I was afraid he was gonna get up and be able to do anything. Obviously, he couldn't do anything at all, but, um, he 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 has a mean mug.
He
He just
does,
looks
yeah. Yeah,
really, really mean.
he does. Cora's got a slightly defeated type of look to her,
Yes, that's what I
and
would call her.
then Cole has this, um he's got this look on him, and somebody had mentioned to me the other day that there is a feeling of Cole maybe believing he's going to get out. Maybe he's telling people he's going to get away with this. He's going to walk away because he didn't do anything. So he's got this look of it's only a matter of time till I'm out of here. Like almost kind of like I got this, not a big deal. He didn't look worried. He did not. His expressions. He was smiling a lot and laughing a lot in the
Mhm.
courtroom.
Yes,
That was something that I thought was just when somebody doesn't value their actions the way the rest of us do, how dangerous they can be. And so he was more concerned of where his attorneys were sitting and how close. And if at one point one of the attorneys told him to pull in closer to let the other attorney um, sit in there, but so he didn't have that look of anything but I got this. I'll be out soon. Paul, however, there was so much guilt and shame on that face that he kept his head down. He didn't look up until almost the very end. And when he did, he does not make any eye contact with any of the defendants or their attorneys. He looked up at the judge. He looked up, kind of at the ceiling a couple of times, but he will not look at anybody else. He didn't even look at the gallery because in order to do that, he'd have to look in Tiffany's way and her attorney's way. And so they were all very different in their stature and
they were.
their presentation. Every one of them. It was that was what was surprising to me. I had to take a lot of mental notes because I was brilliant in all of my glory and forgot my pen and paper. But somebody offered me some. They were very kind. That is what I saw there. They're all very, very different people. Four of them are semi-confident of their actions. Tad is a nervous Nelly, though. His leg was bumping and shaking
Mhm.
the entire time, which I have been told is normal for him. So I think trying to stay in line with whatever plan they have, I think it makes him a little bit nervous. I don't know, but
Now, something I had told my husband when we left, that I was kinda surprised about Cole, I think. If you didn't know that he was in there for murder of two beautiful women, he almost looked like, you were just, like, sitting in a restaurant with them or just kind of a very casual kind of demeanor, He looks very approachable.
Mhm.
Did you get that, Tara? I felt like he's somebody you'd sit and have a chat with and wouldn't
Which one?
know
Which
it.
one?
Cole.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, his demeanor was much more friendly than the rest of them. Yeah, that's what makes him in my hello there. That in my mind, that's what makes him so scary and dangerous because he just does not either. He doesn't value the oh, I don't even know how to say it. He doesn't value his situation the way he should, or he really
Right.
thinks he's going to walk away from it, which would
Yeah.
explain some of his motions, quite honestly.
Yes. And again, yes, thank you guys all for being here. All 524 of you. Thank
I
you very
know it's
much.
amazing. That's
We
awesome.
sure appreciate it. Oh, so Tad's tummy. All
Oh,
right.
yes.
So that was the first thing that was talked about, was the motion for Tad's medical issue. His attorney said that that has been resolved. That issue has been resolved.
Yeah, so
So
they withdrew
whatever
it.
it was, it's done and over with.
Yeah.
Nothing further about that. Tad's attorney said that he spoke, or that she spoke with the medical examiner this past Friday, and medical examiner said that the reports are not ready. But they also said that they don't know when or if they will be ready by 10 days prior
Yes.
to the preliminary hearing. So that was a concern for Tiffany's attorneys as well. The judge did wind up addressing that. That somebody, it's in my notes, but one of them said that they were going to subpoena the state. So the
Yeah.
state was subpoenaed the ME, and they will definitely have the report 10 days before the preliminary, and the ME will be testifying.
Yep. They expect to have that soon, I imagine. So that part is taken care of. And then the second motion was the biggie.
Yeah. So the next one was to consolidate the hearings.
Yep.
And Tiffany's attorney talked the most regarding that.
Yes. And that's so two of them. So it's important to know, and I do think, Karen, I think you will agree with me. It's important to understand that Paul filed the first motion of either separation or join. His first motion was to join. That was
Yes.
followed by Cole or Tad's. Do you remember, Tiffany, or do you remember, Carrie?
I
If Cole,
cannot
one of
remember.
the two filed, and it was a separate. It was Tad's to separate. Oh, God. Did one of them? Did I? I had originally thought that Paul filed to join and the rest filed to separate, but it sounds like one other one filed to join, and I can't remember if it was Tad or Cole.
It wasn't
Tiffany.
Tad or Call.
Okay,
So Tad's papers that they filed were basically the same as Tiffany's.
Okay. So then I must be remembering that wrong, or I heard something different, but that's okay. So the other four were filing to separate. Tiffany and Tad had similar, like Carrie said, similar reasons. Cole's was a little different. I just got a text that Cole and Paul wanted to join. So Cole, I thought that was what it was, but I wasn't sure. So most of the attorneys kept their mouth shut. They just wanted to stay by what their motion said on paper. It was Tiffany's attorney that stood up, and the first thing he said was, like the old riddle, or I've heard this old riddle that says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I sat there and I leaned over to a family member, because he goes on to say, you have to take these small little bites, you have to take it apart. And I leaned over to the family member and I said, yeah, but the elephant has to be in the room at the same time to eat it one bite at a time. So his analogy sucked. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I tried to write down what Tiffany's attorney said. I got
I can
most
tell
of
you.
it. Yeah. The attorney was a younger guy.
Yes.
She has two male attorneys, and then there was a younger female there as well. But his attorney said something about this riddle. And when he did, that's when Tad and Tad's attorney started giggling. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
But what the Tiffany's attorney was saying was every witness that the state presents, there'll be up to 12 more witnesses, to
Right.
Also testify. He said that by joining the hearings, There would be the concern of confrontation and hearsay regarding testimony, which evidence applies to who, and massive jobs to keep, or, it's a massive job to keep track of all that evidence and what have you. He said the judges and the attorneys are only human. He was concerned about the ability to keep track of the evidence. Said that error is more likely to happen if that hearing is consolidated, and then they would have to start all over. He was also concerned about the right to due process and a fair trial.
Right.
He said that if other parties want to consolidate, that's fine, but they want Tifany separate. He said there is still no discovery yet. There are 199 witnesses, I believe he said. They do not have all the DNA or even half of the discovery from the state yet. And real quick, I'm going to back up for just a second because I forgot this part, but it was brought up about the civil forfeiture. If you remember, I think it was our last live that Tad, his attorney, filed papers regarding the civil forfeiture, mainly because there's his mom's truck involved, things like that. And they did not want those things to be sold. The judge said the items will not, or the judge or DA wanted to, said that those items will not be sold. So that was some clarification on that.
Yeah. 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 So I didn't think they kept saying that attorney that spoke up on behalf of Tifany for her motion to separate was eloquent. I don't think it was. I think it was a very weak argument to say, basically, I'm not a good enough attorney to, and I know he mentioned there's a lot of evidence to go through, but that's what you have paras for and things of that nature, right? You have a team in the office that's supposed to be helping you. And he basically tried to say, you're going to violate my client's constitutional rights if you do this, because I can't defend her if you won't give me the time to do the work to defend her. And I thought it was such a weak argument, basically saying I'm not a good enough attorney, and neither are my other fellow attorneys, to get this person off. So you're going to have to give me time to come up with something, type of thing. It's kind of how I heard it. The look on the judge's face, and I know he tried to be unbiased. However, I watched the judge too. His face, I knew what he was going to rule. His face had subtitles coming through loud and clear.
Yes, it did. The judge even brought up the fact of quality of attorneys.
What do you say? Called it the lawyer and the lawyering. You have to be a good lawyer and do good lawyering. It's like, oh, I know where this is going, buddy. I hope you feel it too.
Yeah, definitely felt like that was aimed at Tifany's attorney, like, get your stuff together, no excuses kind of thing. They did mention Tifany's attorney also brought up the evidence. And unfortunately, hopefully Tara will remember, I wrote the number down. He started saying what all there was, and there's 199 videos, 88 audios, 27 phone recordings, 232 page prosecutorial evidence, and then he said 632 of something. Do you know what that was?
Give me a second. I may remember. I know there was over 4,000 pages that they would have to go through. And then the other one he mentioned at 692, I'll try to remember that one. But that's what he used as his defense for Tifany's motion, is we have all these numbers of things to go through. You can't expect me to do that by December, which is basically saying, hey, boss, I know you told me to do this, but that's too much for me. So I'm not going to be able to do it. And the judge was like, suck it up, Buttercup.
Yes.
Do your job.
Heather asked, do they have a trial date scheduled? Will they all go through trial together or separate? We do not have a date yet for trial, only preliminary hearings. And the order of consolidation did come today. That will only apply to the preliminary hearings.
Yeah.
When they do trial, that will be a different judge, is my understanding, correct?
So it depends what judge is available at the time. If the other judge he mentioned, whose name does not come to mind immediately, if that is the judge that is available at that time, it's his discretion. Otherwise, Judge Clark, was that who was presiding today?
It was
Jet?
Judge Jett, who's
Judge
the
Jett.
associate district judge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so while he will stay on it as long as his availability is there, and he should, if there's other hearings, other things like that, or that particular other judge came up later after, with the big twist that is coming up here in a moment. So that's where that came into play. But ultimately, this judge will stay through it. The preliminary hearing, what's important to understand about that, it's not as though it's a pre-trial trial or a practice trial. The preliminary hearing is where the DA will present their case. And it's basically a validation of the charges. So once they present what they have to present, at that point in time, they can stay the charges or they may need to adjust them based on what's there, which is why the other defendants want the preliminary hearing. They want those charges changed, and that's why they wanted them separate. If they can present 4 separate cases, and according to what the state's motion was for joining, which was Tad was the aggressor towards Jilian, and Paul was the aggressor towards Veronica, and the Twomblys were the lookouts, and Tifany was the one giving all the commands. And his clothes were put in with the women. There's a reason why they wanted those preliminary hearings separated, is so that they could adjust those charges accordingly, which is why Cole thought he was going to get out. And that's why Cole one of the reasons why he wanted it separated, I'm sure. However, I think he also thought I think he thought that's why he was going to walk away from this. As long as he could be charged separately from the others and be tried separately, they all have a chance of having different outcomes, which would mean, based on what the state put out there, Cora and Cole could walk away with minimal punishment, while Tad and Paul receive the most because they were the physical aggressors, and Tifany could receive anywhere along the lines because this was not her first attempt.
Right.
And so that's why that preliminary hearing is so important to the 4 remaining for preliminary.
Bandits World is asking, how big is the courtroom? I know that's been a lot of talk about the courtroom size and things like that. Also, I want to bring up the railroad tracks. Those are like a quarter of a block away.
Oh yeah, they weren't a problem at all. Even the
not a
construction, there was loud, some type of construction about right past the railroad tracks. You could hear it outside. You can't hear anything inside. It was
No, and of course anything is possible, but you guys, I'm just telling you honestly, this is exactly how I feel. There is not a concern of these guys grabbing a gun or getting away or planning an escape. It's not going to happen. That place is surrounded by law enforcement everywhere you look. So I just kind of want to put that to rest.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a worry. And also Sheriff, the sheriff there, he wants these people to go to trial. So they're going to keep them safe and protected. They really are.
Yeah.
We watched, and I hope that they don't mind, I won't say their names, but we watched the sheriff embrace 2 of Veronica's family members.
Yes.
And that was so heartwarming. It really was. And you can tell that they appreciate him. And you could see, that he genuinely cares for them and for this case and for the outcome. And I thought that was really amazing. And he didn't do it like, over in a corner. There was people standing around.
Yeah, he was out in the open. They could see him. I did speak to him very lightly, very quickly, just introduce myself. And he was kosher, but he was straight to the point. So, and I talked with family about him, folks that have known him for a very long time. And he can be just gruff, right? Straight to the point, straightforward.
But he smiles and stuff like that. Like, he's not a scary looking guy. He's approachable.
Yeah, he absolutely was. And I didn't see, and I know people, I understand and the feedback I've gotten from several people about he's a major jerk to he's a nice guy. I understand both sides of those perspectives. Absolutely. I don't think anybody else would be any different. He is in his business role. That's one thing to keep. He can't just buddy up and pal around with people all the time. And unfortunately for law enforcement, when they see you anywhere, most people think you're law enforcement, whether you're on duty or off duty.
Right.
And if he's been doing it long enough, sometimes you just put up a guard. I've been married to law enforcement. I have law enforcement friends, as all of us do. Sometimes they just keep that guard up all the time. And they're always, my beau is always in situational awareness mode. And I think that's where Matt is at. So I do appreciate Matt Bowley. He was kosher. He was kind. He was courteous. Watching him hug the family members who he has known for some time. These people have all grown up together as their kids have. And so they get it. That's something to really consider. I know there's a lot of other rhetoric out there that states, this guy's evil. They're all in shenanigans together. They're all shady together. Unless you live in that area, you got to take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. I've lived in my town for 20 years, and sometimes I get along with some folks, and then sometimes I don't get along with those same folks.
Well, yeah, and law
ebbs and flows.
enforcement, they're always going to have people either strongly despise them, maybe they've
Yes.
been in trouble, or, you never know. And we don't know, what kind of sheriff he truly is. But all I'm trying to say is I think he truly does care about these families. He
Yeah.
cares about the victims, and he cares about seeing justice. So I think he's going to do everything possible in his power to protect those defendants. The cameras have been, I know, talked about in our group quite a bit today. No, cameras have not been addressed. They haven't even scheduled a trial date. We only have the preliminary hearing date. It's Judge Jett, who is the associate district judge there in Texas County, that is overseeing these preliminary hearings and the preliminary trial. And now I think after that, it does go to Judge Parsley, because that is who Paul will be seeing. And somebody asked about, so Judge Parsley is going to be the next one. I know in another case, and I can't remember which one it was, but they didn't want to allow, and I think it's happened a few times, where the court did not want to allow cameras in the room, and media actually filed, to try to get them, and they did achieve that. I don't know if that'll happen here. This is a national case. It's just going to keep getting more and more coverage.
Right.
I think it is possible that like Court TV or somebody may be there. But I'm just not sure.
Well, no, there are,
don't know.
excuse me, my allergies are getting ready to act up. So there are cameras in the room. Let's be clear, but those
Yes,
are
there
security
are.
cameras. There's a lot of different precautions in place to ensure the security of the room. So if you have an opportunity to go there and you see cameras, and you're like, hey, the girls were lying, there's cameras. Yes, there's security cameras in there for that purpose. But as far as we couldn't take our cell phones in there. The media was stuck with pen and paper. They search you down. I would hope that this trial would go to Court TV. I don't know that I'm going to be very blunt about this. I don't know if it's sexy enough for everybody until more information comes out.
Right.
And that's going to go back to what the state put out there. And I think if you kind of take what the state put in their motion and Paul's movements after at the end of the hearing today, it might be interesting. It might be sexy enough. I would not be surprised if it did, given the strategy I think that I saw today, and have been theorizing on.
And Tisha, yes, that's my understanding, is that Parsley will be the one doing the main trial. And Joe, thank you for dropping in. I know you've got a long 2 days as well. So,
and yes,
thank you.
a big shout out to Joe. When my car was going to go, we thought I was going to have to walk it back to Wichita. Joe was kind enough to stick around with me, hang out with me. We sent Carrie home so that we could get a tow dolly and try to get that car on the tow dolly, take the tow dolly back. And he hung out with me and hung in there the whole way through. So very big shout out to Joe and his support that he offered today. He is a true gentleman.
Yes. Yep. No, they don't.
Oh my God. Yep. I saw that. It made me laugh. Yep.
He says, sorry. Just trying to be smart over here. But
don't apologize. That's funny. That's funny.
That's funny.
Other people don't have any problem going to other sites and obtaining information and sharing it at their liberty. So I have no problem with you putting your stuff out there either. It is what it is.
Yes.
Not necessarily does, what did that one say? Go back.
Sorry.
Not necessarily does the one that did the crime do the most time. Plea bargains can save them. Interesting you say that. I think that's what I think that's Cole's ace in the up the sleeve. I think he thinks he can do a plea bargain if he can't get his way. I think he'll sell these guys out. I absolutely believe he will sell them out without even thinking about it for what I saw today.
Yeah. All right.
So-
So then we've got some court documents for
Oh,
you.
let me refresh. Oh, which one? Actually, I'll just pull them up on my computer. Which one did you pull
Yeah.
up?
So this one is, and if you'll do like the first two,
I can do
try to
that.
say my voice. They're the Grice ones. His
They're
waivers.
Well, did you pull up the speedy trial waiver or the prelim waiver?
This is the prelim.
Let me pull that up. Oh my, I don't want that survey. Go, nope. Okay, don't show that again. And we're out. And then we increase. Okay, excuse me. So let me kind of set this up for everybody. The judge ruled to consolidate the preliminary trials. We ruled against, we didn't need to rule on the medical. We brought up the discovery. Judge said already did that. Take that up with the district attorney, in which case Tifany's attorney did try to bring that up right away. And the district attorney's like, come see me in my office. Great deflection. And then they started taking out the defendants. So they took Tad out, they took Cora out, they took Tifany out, they took Cole out. And there was some kind of shifting in the amongst the law enforcement in the room. They're trying to figure out, why are we not taking, why isn't Paul getting up? And I was watching them trying to communicate nonverbally to one another. And then at some point in time, and I can't remember how many of the defendants are still in the room, but Paul Grice's attorney and the district attorney had a quick little powwow at the district attorney's desk and then asked to approach the bench. And the judge allowed it, but you can't hear what's said there. So the four other defendants are escorted out, and the judge says he's staying, but everybody else get out. So they excuse the gallery. Within a few minutes, we were invited back into the gallery, and this is what we were invited back into. So it's a waiver of the preliminary examination, and it says the undersigned defendant understands that pursuant to the Oklahoma Constitution, no person may be prosecuted for a felony without having a preliminary examination before an examining magistrate or having waived such preliminary examination. The defendant also understands that the state of Oklahoma must establish at such preliminary examination that there exists sufficient cause for the court to believe that the defendant is guilty of the felony crimes alleged. The defendant further understands that such hearing shall take place in their presence and that they would be afforded the right to see and hear all testimony and conduct a proper cross-examination of the state's witnesses. Further, the defendant understands that he or she would be allowed to subpoena witnesses to testify at such hearing and would also be allowed to testify personally should they desire. The defendant herein is represented by Al, is that Coke or Hook? Al Hook, that's right, that's what they said in the room. Attorney at law, OBA number, there it is, and that the defendant and such attorney have had the opportunity to discuss the defendant's right to a preliminary examination. The defendant hereby freely, voluntarily, competently, and affirmatively waives and gives up such right to a preliminary examination. Defendant's attorney hereby concurs in defendant's waiver given herein and consents to such waiver of the preliminary examination. Additionally, the state of Oklahoma waives such preliminary examination. So let's just kind of backtrack for a second here. Paul Grice was the first one to file a motion to consolidate the preliminary hearing. So all five would sit in the same preliminary hearing, and all five would go through the same process at the same time. Once that is ordered, once it's approved, once it's granted, he then says, by the way, I don't need the preliminary hearing. So in the chat, just for funsies, tell me what you think that means. What did Paul just do to the other four by forcing his hand at the preliminary consolidation and then saying, I don't need it. Now that it's here and everybody else is going to be put together, I don't need to be there. I don't want the preliminary hearings. I wanted them to have it.
Yes, very interesting. There was a couple questions I starred. One real quick was, will the trial stay in Guymon?
Yes.
I believe so. I believe it will.
There's been no motions to move
No.
that trial. There would have to be a motion on either the states or usually actually the defense's side. And that the only reason they would move is to say they can't get a fair trial because there's too much bias. At this point in time, they are staying in Guymon. I may have missed it, but is prosecution required by law to hand over all evidence and discovery, or just what they need for? Nope, they have to hand it all over. Both. Everybody has to see everybody else's hands so they can create their strategies. Sounds like he's got a good attorney. Did he take a deal? Not necessarily. And so that doesn't shock me. Saves the attorney and they can watch the others. So he won't watch the others.
No.
That was one of the things that the attorney asked. And there was something specific that Carrie and I caught as Paul's attorney. The motion was accepted. It was approved. And then Paul's attorney says, now with that, does the defendant need to be present for the other hearings? Because all the hearings take place on the third Wednesday of the month, or at the preliminary for the others. And the judge said no. And the attorney said, I'm just making sure because of transportation issues. And the judge said, nope, he's
Yes.
excused. And then the attorney asked, does counsel for my client need to be present for those hearings or the prelims? And the judge said, no, you're also excused. So Paul doesn't have to be there. This is so super important to what I believe the strategy has been from the get-go. And I'll share that.
Yes.
I think this was planned from go. I think this was planned as soon as everything was being investigated and the heat was getting turned on.
I have the waiver to speedy trial pulled up now, Tara.
Waiver to speedy trial. Let me pull that one up now. It's pulled up on yours, but I'm not refreshing my screen.
Fine. And Yep said, no, not Paul. His attorney will be watching. Saves Paul having to sit, but you can bet they will have an investigator.
They'll have somebody present on Paul's team to make sure that they know everything that's going on. But, and I'll get to it in a second, there's a reason why they don't need to be there. I don't believe believe the counsel or Paul will be there at all. I think they'll have eyes and ears there, but I have my theory on that. So waiver of right.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I was just going to read Lovebug. If he waived his preliminary hearing, it means he's made a deal with the prosecution. Shayna said he turned state's witness.
I would hold on.
Yes.
I get you guys are going with that, but I think there's actually, I think it goes to a higher, I think it goes to a sense of guilt, but we'll get to that in a second. So the waiver of right to a speedy trial. I, the defendant above named, understand that I have a constitutional right to speedy trial. I understand that my matter could be set for trial on the upcoming docket, and if the requested continuance is granted by the court, that my case will not be heard on the upcoming jury docket. I am represented by Al Hook, attorney. I have had an opportunity to discuss this constitutional right with my attorney, and I declare to the court that I freely, voluntarily, competently, and affirmatively waive my constitutional right to speedy trial, and recognize that in giving this waiver, my case will be passed on, or will be passed beyond the upcoming jury trial docket. With full knowledge of my constitutional rights, I hereby waive and give up my right to speedy trial. State that I am doing so with knowledge of my constitutional rights and with the advice of my attorney. So, Paul gave up his right to a speedy trial. Here's my thoughts on Paul's situation. And by the way, for funsies, everybody, and I don't think the documents are out there yet. And I think the information is out there. Actually, yeah, I'll put it out there. Paul, there's rumor, and it's pretty well confirmed that Paul was moved from the Guymon jail.
Yes, and that is kind of backed up by two things that we heard in court today. 2 different times, Paul's attorney mentioned logistical reasons with transportation.
Mm-hmm.
When they got to the point of scheduling his next proceedings, his attorney said that for logistical reasons, he'd like for it to be in the afternoon. And he said, and Paul understands what those reasons are. So it was not announced to the courtroom, But I think that just really backs up what Tara's just saying. I think
Yeah.
Paul Grice is being moved. Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
he is.
So do I think that Paul took a deal? Not the kind of deal that people are thinking. I know there's been a lot of rhetoric out
Right.
there that Paul took a deal to get the death penalty off the table, to stay closer to his family. I don't think so. There's a lot of information that we have shared about Paul. There's a lot of official information that's been publicly made publicly available to Paul. There's also information that we haven't been able to share for
I think
protective
you probably
purposes.
can now, can't you?
To a point. To a
Yeah.
point, I will.
Like what we know about Paul and what
Yes.
possibly might be his
Yeah. What's
motive
right?
in doing
Yes.
this. Yes.
Absolutely. So for a lot of people there was a whole conversation or a whole theory, call it what you will, that Paul told his wife, I'm going to go to the store, I'll be back. And then he never came back and he took off running, that he was on the go. And actually, what we understand from multiple sources is that Paul was in connection, he was in communication with law enforcement early on in the investigation. Now, whether he called them or they called him, or how that happened, or if it's true, we don't know. We just know that we do not have proof of that, so we can't put that out there as proof. But the understanding is he's been in communication with law enforcement from early on. He did give himself up in terms of he surrendered himself. The understanding is there was some conversations that took place. There were some understandings that were made. Call it a gentleman's agreement, call it a deal, but essentially was, I want to go take care of things and then I'll surrender. And he did surrender at Four Corners. We have a picture of his truck there, and that the picture of the truck is confirmed that the truck is his, despite the fact it's a white truck. And oh my God, folks, I've been down in that area. Everybody's got a white truck. Everybody. That's all I saw was white trucks today.
They do.
Oh my God. And so with Paul being so remorseful, and I'd heard it more than once that that you can tell the remorse. And then he was the first one to file. And I think the timing of that, filing that joinder motion was super important. And then the motion is approved. And then he steps back and says, I don't even need the preliminary. I went back and I looked at the state's motion for joining. And if you look back at that motion, there's some very intimate details that only 5 people would know. Only 5.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you got to wonder, how in the hell did they get that information unless one of them talked?
That's right.
And why would Paul make sure to not file a motion to waive his right to a preliminary hearing unless he was sure that he could step away from it and leave the other 4 behind? However, I don't think he's going to leave the other 4 behind. I think what he is doing, based on the character, I'll call it character perspectives I have heard from, I honestly think, I say honestly, I would not be surprised if Paul and his attorney have a strategy to ensure that all 5 go down for the same 5 crimes that they're accused of. And then nobody goes free. Nobody gets a deal. I don't think Paul's taking a deal. I think he'll take the max. I think he'll do what he's supposed to do, but I think he's going to take the other 4 down with him, not because
Yes.
he's being vindictive or evil. I think because he thinks it's the right thing to do. What we saw today was a baby in the courtroom. I know he's like 32. I had to go back and look. He's 32.
He truly has a very likable
he's
baby
so
face.
young.
It's really sad to see him sitting there. I'm only speaking for myself and my opinion on him. I believe that Paul has an immense amount of remorse. I truly do.
Yes.
I think that he is doing this because it's the right thing to do.
I think so too.
I don't think he's trying to get off of this. I don't think that there's going to be some massive plea deal, maybe the death penalty taken off the table, possibly. But Paul has all the information on these other 4, every last bit of it.
I think that's how the state got the information.
Yep.
Go back and look at that state's motion, because it's very specific. You can't get that just by finding the burial site and putting together a theory. Yes. They had specific information about who did what, not we believe. not we theorize. This is how we understand the case. It was straight up. Hi, little Irish girl. I had to say that because I
Yes.
love her. It was straight up. Tad did this, Cullum Cora did that, and Tifany did this, and Paul did that. It was straight up. There was no the evidence says or anything of that nature. So I think Paul gave them the rundown of everything. And I
do
think
too.
the original arrest warrants backed up his story. I think he was the first one to talk, because if you look back, the four were arrested before the bodies were found, if I'm correct.
Yep. They were the day
So
before.
it's I think this case was built off of Paul's narrative, his perspective,
Yep.
and they had to go back and prove it, because you can't just take somebody's word, right? You got to go get the evidence and hope the evidence feeds the narrative. And I think that's what happened here. So I firmly believe that Paul is going to ensure as the right thing to do, that he's going to take these other four down with him, that they're
Yeah,
all
and
going to pay.
Traveling Teresa said not just guilt, but true remorse. And
Yes.
I could be wrong, but that is really how I feel. I feel that Paul, I believe that he believed that the reason why they needed to get rid of Veronica was such a strong reason to protect the children of Veronica, that is why he went along with this. That's my thoughts. That's my opinion. If you guys remember when Paul did his first appearance, Brian Hinton asked them all, do you have anything to say? Nobody did. But when he asked Paul, Paul looked at him and said, I want to apologize to the families. And at that point, there was just something in me. He was different. And, his act is still absolutely horrific. However, if he can save the family from that part of it with him, if
think he
he
will.
just is, yes, I did this, I'm taking responsibility, I am taking the sentence, whatever is handed to me, that I did play my role, and I do think he's immensely remorseful
I
and
do too.
just ate up with guilt. And we also know that because of how he acted. Remember, Tara, to the people that we've talked to that saw Paul in those following days, he was already showing that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, there was his overall demeanor. He wasn't right. People could tell he was upset, and that something was really, really bothering him. He was acting out of character for the context of the situations that they were in. And it's so there was. I think it started from the get go, whether he thought he was doing the right thing or not. And somebody did ask if if I'm trying to be careful how I word things. There was an ask that if, Paul was, how did Paul get involved? How did he become a part of this? How does Tifany have so much power over people? I don't know if it's as much power as it is manipulational power. Tifany was able to figure out what these people's hot buttons were and then use it against them. And so some of the things I have been told, and again, I've not proven this, so I don't put it out there as fact. Some of the things I've been told is that what would trip Paul's trigger is if he thought that a direct family member was directly hurting other family members that couldn't protect themselves.
Yes.
And that was Paul's understanding, is there were people who were unable to protect themselves, were being harmed by those that are supposed to protect them. And I think there was I think he found out later on he'd been used and lied to. I think he found out very quickly, or the guilt. And there was a comment made earlier, and I think Margaret DeYounger made the comment of, can you imagine somebody like Veronica having a baby face coming at you with a weapon the way that it was? And I'm sure in the moment Paul thought he was right. That does not justify. There's a very big difference in justifying someone's actions and explaining them. You still have to account for them no matter what.
Yes.
And so I think Paul's I understand he is very strong in his religion. He's very strong in a
That's the
lot
other
of
thing I was gonna
things.
say. He is very religious, and I'm not saying, like, to a crazy point. Paul grew up his father was a preacher. He grew up in that environment. He is still a very religious person, is our understanding.
Yes.
And, it is what it is. It's horrible, but that we're just sharing how we feel what might be going on with Paul and maybe his way of thinking based on all the
Yeah.
information we know.
Yeah, I'm getting more texts. The more I talk, the more
Oh,
texts I
yeah.
get, which I love, and I want those texts to keep coming. If you are sending me texts and you're listening, if you want that information put out there, let me know. Otherwise, you're just validating what I'm saying, is how I'm taking it. So,
Did
um,
Paul and Veronica know each other? Do you know, Tara? I
I'm
think
gonna
a family member
say
today said they knew Paul. I'm not positive, so don't.
the family I talked to today knew 3 of the defendants, but thought it was a noble yeah, it's not a noble cause
Yes.
at all.
Right.
The family I was talking with today, they knew 3 of the defendants, but not the other 2 necessarily as well. So they knew 3 of them really well. So I don't know that Veronica knew all 5 of them. Obviously, she knew Tifany and Tad very well, specifically Tifany. I don't know if I mean, Tifany, Veronica grew up in that area. To my understanding, the scene where the car and everything happened was only a couple of miles from the home she grew up in. So she literally grew up in there. I mean, she graduated from Yarborough. That's that school just north of there. There is, so it wouldn't surprise me if she did. She would have, I imagine, would have grown up with their kids at the very least. So she probably did know most of them. I don't know if she knew Paul, because I think Paul's a little bit newer to the area by comparison. That's an interesting question to, maybe I'll get something in my text messages, because the more I talk, the more I get, the more information I get. Okay, so I'm not getting, okay, that wasn't the comment I thought it was. Do you know why he was moved to another jail? I would speculate on that one, Debbie, that he's been in the jail with the other 2 male defendants. And
Mhm.
while maybe they don't have direct contact with one another, there is a brethren in the jail. You
Yes,
create
I
little
think for
cliques.
his own safety, I
Yep.
think is the exact reason. Now,
Yep.
we don't know that he has been moved yet. I don't have confirmation on that. Only that we feel that based on what was said in court today and all the other circumstances, that is
It sounds like the plan was in
very likely.
place. So that
Yes.
was interesting, because as Joe and I were trying to manipulate my car situation. Hold on just a second. Let me verify that. Let me verify that real quick. We saw a single law enforcement vehicle coming from the west on 412, coming in. I think it's 412 into Guymon, and Joe's like, "Hey, that's kind of peculiar." I'm like, "Why would that be peculiar? Like, why did he point that out?" And then some messages came in later on that said, "You might want to check out this site." And the site shows that Paul looked to be moved, or is going to be moved, or is moved, or whatever the case may be. And I look back at Joe, I'm like, I wonder, this is odd timing. Maybe we just saw the vehicle that is probably maybe transporting. And
Right.
I did get confirmation that Veronica did know Paul.
Okay, I thought so.
She did know him, so she knew all 5 of those individuals, I would presume.
Yes.
So that's oh God, that's hard. I'm trying to catch up because conflict of interest is the list of cause. Is the list of cause for his relocation? What do you mean by that? Because of conflict of interest is the list of
I think
cause.
she's saying, he's being relocated because there's a conflict of interest. I do think it's more of a safety
I
issue
think
than
it's safety.
anything.
Yeah.
Our understanding is that they cannot communicate with each other in jail. No, they're not walking around with cell phones. There's a list of people, that they can contact like anybody else that's in a jail. But other than that, um, Sunset Girl said, "What are you referring to as a brethren?" Well, like in jail and in prison and stuff, you'll get a group that is like behind you. So
Mhm.
maybe
They-
Tad himself wouldn't attack somebody, but somebody else might do that for Tad or for
right.
Cole, if that makes sense.
Well, if, there's a lot of some of the research I've done for understanding human behavior takes you into jails. And so, for instance, jails will create cliques of their own within the inmates. They'll create their own little gangs, their own little cliques, their own little community, their own little hierarchy, government, call it what you will, to the point of, and this is actually in a book that I read, I believe it's called When Violence is the Answer. It's a brilliant book. I know that title sounds awful, but read it. It's phenomenal for self-awareness and situational awareness. But it said that when inmates are aware that the oh that the jailers are wearing different types of, maybe a new kind of vest or a new outfit, or they have something new on, they'll literally start a riot. They'll start a fight so that they
Mhm.
can literally, they can touch the inmate or the jailers to figure out where that vest goes or how it's changed or what's different. They're not trying to hurt one another. They're creating a deterrent so they can literally feel up the jailers to figure out what's changed and what weapons they have and things of that nature. They've actually done a lot of scientific studies on this. People, and that's, so they create communities. Humans are naturally community oriented. They will create communities, birds of a feather type of thing. We like people who are leaders or who are in control. Some of us are followers, some of us are leaders. And so once you get into, it doesn't matter how big or small it is. And so in the jails, even in Guymon, they may have, a pecking order.
Yes,
And
or
if,
somebody try to get into the jail. I mean, people get arrested just to get in there,
yes,
So, Sunset Girl brings up a point that maybe we need to discuss a little bit again, but, she said, "I thought maybe you meant another misfit."
let me, hold on. Another misfit.
Like another misfit might do something to them.
Oh,
Our thoughts on what are the misfits? Do you wanna talk about that for just a quick second?
the
What they
mis
are, what they're not?
So the Misfits, and for those of you that get annoyed with me in the Facebook group, and I keep asking you to correct yourself, it's not God's Misfits. That is an actual organization that is designed for good, not evil. Despite the fact they're bikers, it sounds bad. It's a good organization. God's Misfits out of New Mexico, I think it is. They are not affiliated with this group in the Panhandle that's been identified as the Misfits. What the Misfits are is just a bunch of people who would get together for Sunday dinner, kind of like a churchgoers anonymous group, where they would talk about some of the progressive changes that some of their churches would be seeing and their distaste for it, or some of the things they didn't agree with their church, but they want to go to church, so they just go and have this time to open up and talk. And that did change the culture. The dynamics of that did change, as I've been told, when Tifany started joining. It became more of a drinking board game fest of things. But the whole, what we understand is that it was one of those things where they're kind of joking around one night, and I believe they said it was Cora Twombly who said, "We're just a bunch of misfits, church
Yes, that's
misfits,"
exactly,
because
yeah.
they all attend different churches from different cities in the area, and it stuck. And then it just kind of got blown out of proportion, I think, when the God's Misfits. That information came to me originally when Carrie was on Boots on the Ground, and while somebody else had put that information out there because it was on their extension in social media, it actually came from me originally, and then we got it corrected as soon as possible. It's just one of those things. There's a lot of excitement. It blew up, and so it's not God's Misfits. It's just Misfits. They hate the term now. I have been told,
Yes,
and so
and I'm with Yep. I think that that has been very much blown out of proportion.
yeah,
Our understanding is what Tara just said, that they just had these meetings and things like that. Now, Tifany took her little group that also did include the cooks. Now, we
yes,
can't say the cooks are involved. We can't say if they had knowledge. They haven't been charged with anything. But it was these 5 and the cooks, basically. that was their group. Okay.
Yes.
So the Misfits, I truly just, it's been blown out of proportion. It
It
really
has been.
has.
So that's why we've laid off on that. We try to correct that as soon as possible. I just received communication that it would be wise to understand, if not embrace the idea that the four, Tad, Cora, Cole, and Tifany, definitely have ways to communicate with one another. So I can agree with that. And then we may have to, I just got something on the Misfits. We will come back to that one. We'll come back to the Misfits thing. I just got somebody can hear us and it's like, nope, it is not blown out of proportion at all. And I definitely want to have that conversation with this individual. So we will circle back to that. I don't know what we're going to circle back to, but we're coming back to that.
I mean,
one.
I think when I say blown out of proportion, I mean, I don't think that there's a group of 20 people that are calling themselves the Misfits that are out there to murder people. That's what I mean by saying it's blown out of proportion.
Clarity is important, isn't it?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, there was a lot more members
Yes.
of this group. But I have lots of messages from people that were quote unquote members that knew nothing of this, would never have dreamt anything like this. And I think somebody else mentioned in the chat. Sunshine said, my nephew was a good friend of Paul's. And he said there's no way he would ever do this if he didn't think somebody was in harm's way.
I'm gonna ask for pause on those thoughts. And I would be on that board, on that ship as well. I would hop all over that train, except I've heard a lot of people say, I can totally see Cora doing this. I could totally see Tifany doing this. And I've heard somebody say, yeah, Tiffany's, she's completely crazy, but not that kind of crazy. Or Cole's gruff, but he would not do this kind of thing. So you don't know what you are capable of doing until you do it. We'd like to think that was the coolest thing I heard in 5th grade that stuck with me all these years is we would like to think we know what we would do. And I would like to think I would not get involved in these kind of things. But at the same time, there's got to be a threshold that somebody who is a super manipulator and super controlling, there's got to be a threshold that they know how to find and get to and cross, take you over that threshold to get you to do something that for some people would seem out of character, and for others lines right up with what they know about you. And so I want to be, and I'm saying this as I'm getting some additional communications regarding these four, 5 actually, and about the kind of people they are, and maybe there's a lot more to learn. I have been told that knowing that Cora and Cole were involved was not a surprise. So that was alarming. So I know Carrie and I have been a part of several conversations where we've been told, this can't be Cora. This cannot be. There's no way she's like this. She's not this kind of person, because that's that person's experience. Where somebody else is like, that is totally who that woman is. I'm surprised it took this long. So that's something there's a lot of emotional wavelengths, I'll call it, to consider in this one, I think. So it's a lot. It is so much. Are you still there, Carrie? Did I lose you?
I am. I was getting messages too.
I was like, no, the messages are good. They will definitely keep us occupied at the same time. I'm going to check my other set. So that's, let me see. There we go. Do you think Tifany threatened Paul's family to make him do this? That's the first time I've actually heard that idea, Casey. I'd have to think that one through. I don't know if, God, I hope not. That would be terrible that she had to threaten him. My understanding is Paul thought there was actual harm to individuals who couldn't protect themselves. And yes, I'm being cryptic on purpose. When we put it out there on the Facebook group that we really don't want certain individuals brought up, and we want to try to be careful of those while being respectful of theories at the same time. So there is a way to word things without bringing up things that'll get you banned or have your comments and posts deleted from the group. So again, that's why I put out there on the posts that if you are unsure of how to word something without getting into trouble, ask me.
Yeah, you
Literally,
guys can always message us. We
yes.
respond to every message. We get you can't even imagine how many we get a day with a group of 20,000, but
Mhm.
we do respond to every single one we see.
Yes. And yeah, run for justice. That is absolutely 100% true. Manipulators can put you under a spell where you believe anything they say. Truly, yes, absolutely. Manipulators can often be gaslighters, and that's where you see something, you knew it happened, and somebody's like, "That's not what happened. That's not all what happened. I know you think you saw that, but what you really saw was this," and they give you their interpretation or convince you otherwise, which is how they drive you crazy. They make you believe that you're insane. And so, yes, when you've got a master manipulator like Tifany is, and she checks all the boxes just on her nonverbal alone, it doesn't surprise me that she was able to lead the troop on this one. Carrie and I have tried to find people who see good in her, think she's a good person. We've tried because we wanted to get all perspectives of all these individuals or anybody involved. And we only found one person that knew Tifany for a small amount of time in high school who's like, she's so great. I love her. She's awesome. Can't believe she did this. And it's like, when did you know her? Back in high school.
Yeah.
Tiffany's like 55. That was 40 years ago. Like, so we try. And
I mean,
unfortunately,
we all have those people that'll be like, there's people that talk horribly about me, and I can tell you most of it's not true. But we all have people that like us or don't like us, and that's
Mhm.
just the way it is. Not everybody's going to jive or think highly of somebody, and somebody else may have the complete opposite opinion. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we have gathered on most all of them. I probably have 50% say Tifany was there. She would do anything for other people she cared
Right.
about. And then we've got people that are like, well, back in high school, she was a bully, meanie, and we've heard stories that are a lot more recent than high school, but
Yeah.
just the point there. Sunshine said, my nephew is saying that Paul is innocent, but he definitely felt like there is brainwashing. He's coming to realization and trying to do the right thing. So I completely agree with the last part of that. I think there was some brainwashing going on. I think he's gullible and what have you. But I do think he's also come to the realization that what he did was absolutely horrific. He's trying to do the right thing for the family. That's just my
Agreed.
opinion. I could be completely wrong.
No, I
But
think you're spot on. I think that's how the state knew how to word their motion to consolidate, is I think Paul gave them the information they needed. I think he flipped quicker than I
yeah,
think. And I've gotten some other information that says that that he'd been talking to law enforcement from the get go.
yeah,
So this was, which we had been hearing over and over and over again from various sources of varying distances, we'll call it, from Paul.
but
So
I'd say this is very good confirmation.
yes, I think that says something. There was more in this group. I think TA curated the people she could convince, and who's, yes, and the people who's had,
Absolutely.
that is a perfect point. Yep. And
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
manipulators choose their prey specifically on purpose. They don't just choose anybody. They look for the weak link, the person they can control. Tad is a great example. I hate to say that, and I know that while his mother's probably not listening, that would be a crappy thing to hear. I'd hate to hear about my son, but he was nervous in that courtroom. He bumps his leg. That's all he could do, was just keep bouncing his leg and bouncing his leg and bouncing his leg. He was not comfortable. It's like he needed somebody to tell him what to do. So, and he was very reliant on his attorney. Um, so it's just, he's been manipulated. And from what I understand from a very early on, there has been some details that have come in to state that Tad and Tifany have known each other for a very, very, very long time,
Oh my gosh.
to the point of, I have heard rumors um, that she may or may not have been his babysitter at one point. And so um, these are rumors. I don't know if they're true or not. They come from very reliable sources, but that goes to show how, and to my understanding, and Tad's not been the greatest partner by any means. I've gotten that information as well. But when you find a guy who is willing to do anything and can be easily manipulated, especially if you are, a specific kind of personality where you use your emotions to control somebody. It sounds like he is just as much, he's naive and gullible and just will do whatever he's told to do because maybe Tifany will give him what he wants. I don't know. So the dynamics in the courtroom were amazing. There were I wish they'd let me record that. I don't even need any audio. I just want to record body language because it was something else. It really was.
All right. So I have the consolidation. The judge did order a consolidation for the preliminary hearing, despite the 4 or 5. And I'm sorry, I can't remember how many it was. It was either 4 or 5. 4 that wanted it separated or something like that. But in this one, Tara, do you mind to read it for me?
Yeah, I can.
I'm
Clearly
sorry.
your voice is doing
Nobody
well.
wants to hear my voice right now, though.
No, you're good. So you have the state of Oklahoma versus the 5 defendants, and it says order consolidating cases for purpose of preliminary hearing. So on Wednesday, August 21, 2024, the court solicited briefs from all counsel on the question, should these cases be consolidated for preliminary hearing? The court has received and read the preliminary hearing joinder of defendants filed by Mr. Hook. It looks like Hawk, but I guess it's Hook. In CF 2024-81 on Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. Defendant's motion for severance for a preliminary hearing and memorandum in support of, filed by Ms. Miskell. That's whose attorney is Miskell? I don't remember whose that one is, but that was a severance. I think that might be Tad's attorney.
Yes, I said Tad's, but I was muted. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Tad's attorney.
So then defendant's brief in support of consolidation for preliminary hearing filed by Ms. Lopez and Ms. Weber. That is Cole. So Cole was the other one that filed for consolidation. And then motion for individuals, separate preliminary hearing filed by Mr. Solomon and Mr. Richard. And that's Tifany's attorneys. Defendant Cora Twombly's motion for separate preliminary hearings and brief in support filed by Ms. Hearn. And the state's brief in support of consolidation for preliminary hearing filed by Mr. Leach. And then the court has read pertinent cases and heard arguments of all counsel and finds. Mr. Hook was the first to respond, having filed a brief entitled Preliminary Hearing Joinder of Defendants. Here's the conclusion. And I'm not reading the cases or the dates. You guys all know those. Joining multiple defendants for a single preliminary hearing when they could have been charged as co-defendants appears to be consistent with the Court of Criminal Appeals preference for both justice and judicial economy. However, the decision appears to be within the discretion of the court. Mr. Hook has found no published cases issued by the Court of Criminal Appeals requiring or even approving the severance of preliminary proceedings, including preliminary hearings, for individual defendants because of claims of prejudice or any other reason. The court has not found any published cases which would either prevent the consolidation of these cases for purposes of preliminary hearing or question the wisdom of doing so. And then the judge went on to quote, 8th, the purpose of the preliminary hearing is to establish probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause that the defendant committed the crime. And first, the witnesses must be examined in the presence of the defendant and may be cross-examined by the defendant. There are no other requirements in either Oklahoma statutes or the opinions of the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. Consolidation of these 5 cases for purposes of preliminary hearing before the court as examining magistrate does not prejudice any individual defendant nor deprive any individual defendant of due process. Ms. Miskell, hold on, I need to scroll up here. Ms. Miskell filed defendant's motion for severance for preliminary hearing and memorandum in support of case 71, and that would be Cora Twombly's. Ms. Miskell acknowledges C, joint preliminary hearing, is at the discretion of the court, but raises the specter of prejudice caused by guilt by association, denial of right of confrontation, risk that the court would find probable cause based on the cumulative weight of the evidence rather than the merits of charges against individual defendants, evidence confusion, and antagonistic defenses. The cases which addresses these issues are all cases about the issues of joinder and severance of the actual trial of the case. Ms. Lopez, and this is back to Cole Twombly, filed defendant's brief in support of consolidation for preliminary hearing. Alleged in her brief, number 4, defendant would not be prejudiced from a joint preliminary hearing and requests this court keep these 5 cases consolidated until the conclusion of the preliminary hearings. Mr. Leach, and that's the DA, he filed the state's brief in support of consolidation for the preliminary hearing in all 5 cases. In his brief, Mr. Leach quotes Justice Scalia, who wrote in Richardson v. Marsh, "It would impair both the efficiency and fairness of the criminal justice system to require in all these cases of joint crimes where incriminating statements exists that prosecutors bring separate proceedings presenting the same evidence again and again, requiring victims and witnesses to repeat the inconvenience and sometimes trauma of testifying." Ms. Hearn, excuse me, and that is that one's Cora's, filed defendant Cora Twombly's motion for separate preliminary hearings and brief in support of her case. And this is quoted as, "Each of the 5 cases will be represented by teams of attorneys attempting to effectively preserve every viable benefit from the preliminary hearings. A number of evidentiary issues can come to light and be litigated during preliminary hearing, including the strict prohibition against the use of statements, confessions of non-testifying co-defendants set forth in Bruton v. United States." So Mr. Richard filed motion for individual separate preliminary hearing as required, pointing out that there exists to wit no mechanism or specific authority that allows joinder of proceeding prior to trial. There is certainly no authority that requires it. In his brief, Mr. Richard sets out defense counsel's familiar tasks during preliminary hearing, namely preserving witness testimony, examining witnesses in detail, preparing to cope with trial testimony, exposing weaknesses in the prosecution's case, and fashioning vital impeachment tools. Mr. Richard identifies anticipated difficulties of conducting a consolidated preliminary hearing, concluding procedural questions abound. Mr. Richard warns a joint hearing may create a procedural quagmire and concludes a joint hearing is likely to become an evidentiary labyrinth. The quality of the attorneys in this case, this is so awesome. The quality of the attorneys in these cases is the answer to the potential difficulties faced by the examining magistrate when deciding whether or not to consolidate these cases for purposes of preliminary hearing. Given the quality of representation of each defendant in each of these cases, the potential harms which defense counsel warn of in their motions for severance are unlikely traps for examining magistrate who will not be unwary, but rather fully advised on the premises by these motions, objections, and argument of each attorney in these cases. Mr. Richard, at the end of the argument portion of his brief, quotes from the 1911 Oklahoma case of Thompson v. State, "When a man is on trial for his liberty or life, there should not be undue haste. The court does not suggest that this quote is taken out of context, but because the case is about the importance of good lawyers and good lawyering, more of the old language should be included in this order." So on the 28th day of October 1910, the evidence in the murder trial of Jefferson County, Oklahoma concluded, whereupon the court immediately commenced reading his charge to the jury, and thereupon the attorneys for the defendant asked permission of the court to be allowed to examine and inspect the charge for the purpose of objecting and accepting to such part thereof, and they might deem objectionable, whereupon court informed the attorneys for the defendant that they could take oh my gosh, this is so hard to read, that they could take a general exception to the charge as a whole and did not submit said charge to the attorneys for the defendant. Now remember, this is written back in 1910, so it's not exactly modern type of writing. In these excerpts, Judge Henry Marshall Furman wrote of the importance of lawyers to the trial court. "Experience teaches that even the wisest and best men are sometimes mistaken in their views. It matters not how able and learned a judge may be. He cannot always, without the assistance of counsel, prepare instructions which fully and correctly present all the issues involved in a case to the jury. Prudence and justice would suggest that it would be safest and best, before submitting instructions to the jury, to call upon counsel for both sides to point out specifically what objections, if any, they may have to such instructions as they may think are necessary. The question of time should not be considered where the administration of justice is at the issue. When a man is on trial for his liberty or life, there should be no undue haste. The proceedings should be conducted with deliberation, and every opportunity should be afforded both parties for furnishing information as to the matters involved, either as to the facts or the law. Secure in the knowledge that the examining magistrate has been and will continue to be assisted in the proper performance of his duties by excellent lawyers and excellent lawyering, these cases are consolidated for purpose of preliminary hearing. The preliminary hearing in these cases shall begin on Tuesday, December 17th, 2024 at 9 a.m. It is so ordered. There you have it. So does anyone know Hearn's first name and correct spelling?
Yeah, it's on the screen right now. It is Hearne.
Yeah.
Susanna with an S, with two S's. Susanna Hearn.
So they are consolidating the preliminary for the 4 because Paul waived his preliminary. That is what's going on. So again, the defense or the prosecution is going to present their cases during the preliminary to ensure that they've got the right charges in play.
This is something I've always kind of wondered about. I know a lot of people bring up the CASA, with Jilian and stuff. But my understanding is those were not the people that Tifany had put on the list were just like people that they knew. Is that your understanding, Tara? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that they're like court appointed in that sense that we generally know about.
Correct. So it's not as though the court chose them, the court approved them. So they had to, each side had to bring a list of individuals. But the caveat to that is my understanding, Veronica had to be okay with Tifany's choices, and Tifany had to be okay with Veronica's choices. If I understand some of the things I've heard, Veronica had a struggle to find people that Tifany was okay with. She actually rejected a few of Veronica's choices. Jilian was one of those that I think Tifany knew, and not knew intimately, but was aware of as far as Hugoton, probably understood she was a pastor's wife type of thing and considered her harmless, but might be harmless, but, and this is an ugly word, expendable, which is why Tifany made sure her court appointed person was not there that day. Cheryl Bruni was given a few weeks off in order to, as it was put in the warrant, see how the supervisors acted and how the children acted, how all the dynamics were with Veronica's court appointed supervisors, because usually it was Cheryl Bruni. So Ridiculous SC has an interesting point. I still can't get over Paul. Let me highlight that. There, thank you. I still can't get over Paul being in the church Easter celebration with his family after stabbing a mother to death. Like, how does one's brain compartmentalize that? So if you've been through a traumatic situation, some people will embrace the trauma and the feelings right away. They don't have a 20/20 hindsight type of thing. They feel it in the moment and that's it. Other people, they don't feel it right away. It has to sink in. Maybe it has to marinate. And for Paul, that's what it sounded like happened. It had to marinate for a little bit before he realized what he had done. Cole and Cora one of them two had a birthday party. Nobody knew the difference. Tifany was at some sort of get together as well. Some of these people felt vindicated in their actions, and others, like Paul, it hit them and they decided to probably do something about that. So it's, again, we'd like to believe we know what we would do, but go back and look at some of the things that hit you in the moment and you just had your immediate reaction, and some things that took a while to react to. That would be my explanation for that one. Ridiculous, which is really weird to call somebody out as ridiculous, but that is the name you have on the screen. Let's see. Sunset Girl says, I saw a message in the group that there was a date in February for Paul's trial. Correct. They are looking at, what was the date?
It's February 19th.
It's tentative.
It
right?
is No, it's set up for February 19th at 1:30 in front of Judge Parsley. The February 19th at 1:30, and he is excused from participation on all the consolidation of the hearings. So he does not have to appear back until February 19th. They are going to have another, they'll continue to have a court hearing the third Wednesday of every month. And that's just kind of like, if there's any matters that are pending before the court, and that'll be determined at that time.
Right. That's that tentative part of his date is if there's
Yes.
anything else, because he doesn't get a speedy trial. That's why they say
Right.
unless something comes up, we'll go with February 19th, but otherwise that's the date. Why do you think Paul felt different or had a change of heart? He was raised super religious. He was raised in a certain way. So that's, I don't know if that's it or somebody, if maybe he opened up to somebody. There's a lot of different things that could be going on there, but hopefully as time goes, we will get some, insight on that one. Hopefully. Maxine's comment was interesting. As sick as it sounds, Paul may have still been on the high from the day before. That could very much be true. That could very much be true. And it does sound bad, but yes. And then guilty is guilty no matter you and up to. Yeah, I agree. Jesus, for me, I agree. Guilty is guilty no matter you and up to it. Could have stopped it. Yeah, any one of those. That's why I think my theory of Paul's strategy is that we were all five there. We all five participated. Any one of us could have stopped it. And that's all it would have taken is one of us stopping it. And none of us did, which I think if I am reading everything that Paul and his attorneys are putting out there, I think that's what he's trying to put out there is we did this together. We're going down together.
Yeah. And somebody asked Paul's trial for what? Well, he's foregoing his speedy trial and his right to the preliminary hearings. So he's just going straight into the trial. And, he's charged, they are all charged with the murder in first degree, 2 counts of that, the conspiracy to commit murder in first degree.
Yeah.
And I believe were the kidnapping charges dropped, I believe they were.
I don't think so. I don't remember that being dropped. I think they're all still there.
Look back.
Yeah, because I don't remember hearing anything being dropped. Still think all the charges will stick on all 5 because they did this all together and planned it together and participated together. Patrick, that's what I hope
I do
for,
too.
but that preliminary hearing is going to determine that. The state putting out there what they did, that's why the state worded their motion to consolidate the way that they did, was to say, look, without the lookouts, without lookouts Cora and Cole, then Paul and Tad couldn't have done what they did. Without Tifany masterminding it all, none of it would have happened. Without the 2 aggressive actions of Tad and Paul, there wouldn't have we wouldn't have needed lookouts. So that's what the state's saying is everybody had a very important role, and without one, the other couldn't have done it. And so he's going, it looks like they're going that route.
Yeah. I agree with Jared's
Yeah.
comment. I think he waived his preliminary because he's saying he's guilty. He just wants to get on with his punishment. He wants to be at least one of them that doesn't put the family through all this.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of remorse. He knows he's not getting out of this. I don't really see a plea deal other than maybe the death penalty being taken off the table. But Paul would definitely have information that he could provide to the DA if the others are not providing that.
Correct. Cell phones, no. Tablets, yes. But the tablets, I believe, there's restrictions around those. It's not like they carry cell phones. And I've heard this before that they have cell phones in there. They do have the opportunity to communicate with folks outside of jail. Yes, they have the opportunity to do that. Folks have the opportunity to communicate back with them. That communication has to be initiated by the inmates. It's that simple. Do they just walk around carrying this stuff? That is not my understanding. My understanding is they have restricted types of access to tablets, and those are monitored. They just don't have free reign. They
They are
are
very
monitored.
monitored.
They can see who is doing what, when, where, and why, and how, which is
And
why
all
some folks.
contacts also have to be approved by the jail too.
Yes. So I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of rhetoric that they're just walking around with cell phones. So they're out. No, they are not. Let's make some sense of this for a second. If they could walk around their jail cell with them, why would they shackle them out in the public? If they could have that kind of freedom inside, why don't they have some sort of freedom like that outside? So they are restricted in the prisons. That's not to say they can't find ways to talk to one another. That's not to say they can talk directly to one another. They can get messages to each other through their attorneys or through other means. So
Right.
they were, look at the, I'll call it creativity. That's not my favorite word to use in this particular situation because I have a creative mind, but look at the creativity they put into getting to the point that they're at today. They'll find a way if they want to. And having said that, with so many people on the line with us, I am sure some of you understand how they are getting those connections connected. So there's, and if you don't, if what we say doesn't make sense or doesn't feel good, there's nothing stopping anybody from calling Cimarron County Jail and asking. They can tell you the policies and processes that these inmates are under. They can't tell
Yeah,
you
and
specifically what those
I
people
can
are
tell you,
doing.
I actually called and asked them this exact question. So I do have the firsthand knowledge straight from the jail. And also, I am also told that they are not allowed contact with each other. But like Tara was saying, and some of you in the chat, if there's a will, there's a way. But in general, they are not allowed to have contact with each other.
Shayna, and I think that's how you say your name. I know I've been through this before with you. I'm pretty sure it's Shayna. Tablets are rented. Okay, great point. I'm glad you brought that up. I know this not firsthand because I've been in there. I know this firsthand because of family members. When you're in jail, prison, you can have a quote unquote account. It's like a bank account. Your family members can put money on that so you can buy things or rent things. That's part of the restricted access to things. So yes, you have to have money in your account to do that. That's not to say that family members are not putting money on these people's accounts, right? So
Yes.
very good point. Thank you, Shane. She'll correct me if I screwed that up. So it's and I like what Margaret, if Cole and Cora were just blocking the road, what was their cleanup in the trucks that they were? So when I always go to theory on this because it's not been put out there yet, Margaret, that I do think that Cole and Cora were the ones that were blocking Highway 95, forcing Veronica to take a right onto L Road. I believe that Paul was blocking L Road, forcing Veronica to turn down that 2-track road the car was found on. And I think that's where Tifany and Tad were at with the truck and trailer. And I think it would seem ideal especially after seeing the site yesterday very quickly, but I saw it. It would make sense to me that Veronica pulls up behind Tad and Tiffany's truck and trailer because they've got that. It's a 2-track road. It's not like you can pass. It's 2 tracks. There's no way to pass. And then one truck pulls up like beside them because it's a truck. It can get into that kind of terrain. And then another truck pulls up behind them. So they're shielded from the highway. That is how I think it went down. That's how I think they got ambushed. I did question today, and somebody actually made the same questions. If that happened, why didn't they use their cell phones? Why not a 911 call or a text? Again, it's easy from our position to say, why not just do that? But when I was coming up onto L Road on 95 yesterday, following Carrie, it come up quick. So if you see a car blocking that, you're just kind of like, and you're used to that area because Highway 95 it's semi-traveled. It's 412 at 4 corners is super traveled. I can see why they didn't want to do it there. Yeah. But Highway 95, you've got some time between cars on that highway. And L Road will sneak up on you. And so if you see...
I've probably been there 20 times.
Yeah.
And it sneaks up on me every time and I have to turn around. So that's how quickly it truly does.
And you can't, and there's no way when we passed that road, because the storms were starting to come in, following Carrie and knowing her like I do and knew what she was doing, the storms were going to be too much. So we were just driving by it. You can't just take a sharp right turn after you pass L Road to get to that 2-track, you can't just take a sharp right turn. It is a very hard, it's like a 15-degree angle to turn back onto the 2-track road. You're not getting back on it. So you have to catch L Road to catch that 2-track. And it's with as many white trucks as I saw today,
Right.
nobody would think twice
Yeah.
to be driving down and see 3 white trucks sitting by a field nobody would have thought to stop and ask, do you guys need help? Because it looks like somebody had help, right? It looks like the situation is probably, it's all under control or whatnot. So I can see if people were driving by and Cole and Cora were doing their part to make sure, what cars were driving by. I can see why people would have driven by and be like, huh, that's interesting, but they don't look, doesn't look like it needs my help, and keep going. So it's that was the one thing I really wanted to see, is if my ambush theory fit the way those roads were set up, and it absolutely did. I feel strongly that's what we're going to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and then the cleanup of the trucks. I don't know the extent. We need more details to understand what the cleanup was, quite honestly.
How much blood was in there, that kind of thing. So they've only just released the minimum amount of information that they need to release at this point.
Yeah.
But like we said earlier, there is an immense amount of evidence that will come out in the trial.
There is. Are the 5 on self-unaliving watch with cell phone not that I'm aware of? If that would have to be there would be documentation on that somewhere that they were on that kind of watch. So I don't think so, Margaret. Oh my gosh, the cell phone, uncomfortably numb. I was so confused. When I was in Guymon, my cell phone did not want to work. I scared people because I was not responding to my text messages. And in Hugoton, very hit and miss. I get on those roads and I'd get 5 miles of great service, and then it would be nothing. It was not. And then the storms last night on top. So yeah, that service is, you can't rely on your cell phones out there. I know there's a cell phone tower right where,
right there at. Mm-hmm.
But again, if you see a truck on the highway that you're not expecting to see and you're caught off guard, you're like, oh, okay. I don't know what's going on here, but I guess I'll just route around. And you wouldn't think to look for another block and then another block. So I think Veronica was just caught off guard. They were probably confused, a little disoriented. By the time they figured out what was going on, I think it was too late. I think the aggressive actions were underway. The cell phone stopped pinging at 9:42, and I don't believe it took very long for things to take place. I just think it was one of those, time was of the essence. That's why it's
and I know that we've heard that there was 2 sites. That I just don't think that's true. I believe everything did happen right there.
That one I can confirm. Everything.
Yes,
The one site.
I wasn't going to say I could confirm it, but yeah, we can confirm it. That everything, it did happen right there. So the idea that it occurred in a couple of different spots just isn't true. I think it happened extremely quickly.
Yes, I think.
And I
so
think you guys will understand that more as well once the medical examiner's report comes out.
Agreed. And you have to look at things too. Again, 412 is a super busy highway. It's the main highway between Guymon and Boise City in terms of getting between the 2 towns, and for folks to get to those 2 towns. Four Corners does not offer a lot of opportunity for coverage, even with 3 trucks. And it's right there. It's out in the open. It's easy to see. It's and it's labeled. There is a sign that literally says 4 Corners as you come up on it. I had not heard that before. I saw it last night and thought, oh, that's why everybody knows. And so, but the area where it doesn't surprise me that those phones stopped pinging at 9:42. The meetup was supposed to occur at 10 o'clock. And so they knew to get there in position. Those 5 knew to get in position early on in case Veronica showed up a few minutes early. Timing was important for this whole situation. If Veronica had been late, I think you had the same situation. If she'd been a little earlier, could have changed things. Don't know. But they made sure they picked that spot on purpose because they knew. They absolutely knew they could get her there and nobody would be the wiser as to why there's 3 trucks sitting there on a 2-track road. So it's um, and I see was Veronica's vehicle left on purpose? Thoughts? I've heard speculation that there was a desire to bury the vehicle. I disagree with that strongly. I don't think they were going to bury it. I think the idea was, I think they could go two ways. One was to move it to a property where nobody could go on to find it, private property, because they thought that would be protected, or just to leave it there and whatever happened, happened. But we're talking about the same people who took a burner phone into a cell phone repair store to repair the burner phone. These are not the brightest of criminals. They're not savvy, villainous type of. These are not the people don't write Hollywood $1 million makers off of this kind of stuff. This is like stupid humor where you take a cell phone in to be repaired that is a burner phone, a clear burner phone. So I don't know they may not even thought through what they would do with Veronica's vehicle.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with Tara on that. I've always felt that the car was never intended to be loaded onto a trailer. And oh my gosh, I mean, like, kind of common sense also tells us how much work would have entailed. It's only my opinion. I think that the freezer thing may have been in the trailer, possibly.
I think
I
so.
believe that they were put into it there, and then the equipment was used to put the freezer into the ground.
That's interesting you say that. I hadn't really thought that through. That my first instinct would be to say yes, but those freezers are freaking heavy. So it might actually make more sense that the freezer was already in the hole and ready. Because
It could have been.
I don't know what time Cole and Cora got back to
See, there
their
was not
home.
much time that day. There just wasn't
No,
much
and moving that
no.
big freezer would take some time.
And I
So
think, yeah, Maxine said, and remember, Cora said things didn't go as planned. And
correct.
I think that's part of it. They, I think, intended on having more time. And Russell said drew immediate attention to the crime scene. But then, it took, 2 weeks to find them.
Well, I don't think you know what you say that, Russell, and yeah, my first thought would be to agree with that. I don't think they thought that anybody would be looking for them that quickly
I
because
don't either.
the family was out there as soon as. I mean, that family was out there within an hour or so. I don't think they thought it would be that quick. So I think that was one surprise. It would not surprise me if they thought, they could essentially just kidnap the two and, you know, things would transpire later. It wouldn't surprise me if there was an adrenaline rush where maybe both the women fought back and that was not
Right.
expected. And so
I have this little video that I just pulled out, Tara, for anybody that may not have seen the actual area.
oh
This
yeah,
is a video I took when I was there
I'm gonna refresh
searching.
to see it.
Well, I'll let Tara refresh first so she can see it too. Yeah, run for justice. I agree. At least align the speculation up with the evidence presented so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. As far as eyewitness to the crime, I do believe that there might have been a farmer across the road that saw something, but what he saw, we don't truly know. We just don't know.
We haven't talked to anybody who claims to have been a witness per
No,
se
we
to
kind
the
of
actual crime.
heard, but that's about it. Yeah, so we just don't
Mhm.
know. Okay, so this is the video of that area. Real quick, I'm just pausing it. That is the spot of blood that was there on the ground. And keep in mind, this was only, a week after the murders occurred. Not mean to just rewind that all that way. There we go. It makes me so sad to watch this again. I don't pull it out very often, but I've got quite a few of them. But that just shows you, like, the landscape and what they were dealing with there. So this is the dirt road that comes right off of the highway.
Mhm.
This is the dirt road they would have turned down. So I'm, like, walking, where am I walking?
Looks like you'd be walking west on L Road.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
that's the highway. That's Highway 95 in the
Yep.
background there.
Yeah.
So that's that
So
road that sneaks up on you. You have to
Mhm.
know to look for it and expect it.
Yes. Juxtaposition, I've not heard anything even close to that.
Nothing at all. That's the first time I've seen something like that.
Yeah.
I've heard other drug theories and rumors, but nothing remotely close to that.
Yeah. I'm not good at distance, but the highway to the track is not far at all.
No, it's less than a quarter mile. So
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely less than a quarter mile.
You could walk that. It's that from 95, Highway 95 to the L Road, the track, it makes there's a triangle of land there. You could easily walk that whole triangle of land within 5 minutes very, very easily. And so leaving the vehicle, blood on the ground, does indicate that the five were not wise to how not to get caught. That's interesting that you say that. Somebody else mentioned that earlier to me. If we drop down to why Paul would not want a speedy trial. So, Sunset Girl. Oh, where's my pointer? There we go. Thank you. My screens are
I
not
gotcha.
lined up. You do. Why would Paul not want a speedy trial? Again, I think he's taking responsibility, taking ownership. Maybe he is going for a deal, but not the kind of deal where he's going to get some benefit out of it. I could see him saying, "Don't waste your time on trying to make it a speedy trial. They already know what they're going to do. So why speed up the trial and get there faster?" A speedy trial is designed to not keep somebody in jail that shouldn't be in jail. It's trying to make sure that if somebody is innocent, they're found innocent, they spend less time in jail if they're detained. But in Paul's case, I think part of his strategy is like, I'm actually good because that's where I'm going to be staying anyway. But I'm going to continue to help you guys out. So I think they've had this strategy built out for some time. Let's see. I'm glad we answered the question for juxtaposition. I don't know which question it was.
I don't know if you guys can see.
Is that another video put up or picture?
Okay, yeah, this is just a picture. I was going to try to enlarge it, but if you guys can see it, let me see here. Come on. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is the highway right there where the stop sign is. If I back out where I'm standing, taking that video or that picture, right there is where they would have turned off. So it's through literally that close to the highway.
Yeah, it's not far at all.
Thank you, Maxine.
see, believe TA intended it to be permanent, unsolved, missing. Think I can get behind that statement, Margaret.
I can too.
I can
Absolutely.
totally get behind that one. I think that's what they thought was going to happen, but I think she just probably misjudged some of her minions.
Hmm. Hey, real quick, you guys, there are 429 in here and there's like 124 likes. Will you guys just click the like button real fast for us? It's factual information. So as we're sharing the case and people are looking up the case on YouTube, when you give it that like, it just helps it rise up in the algorithm so that the factual information is seen first before the non-factual rumor mill. And we'd really like to help with that situation. So if you guys would just give it a like, it's free. We really
great.
appreciate you doing that.
Outstanding. Is there any other questions in the group from today? Because we've got every third Wednesday of the month, there's a hearing for whatever needs to be reviewed. It's set on the docket, so that time is already scheduled. Paul Grice will, as long as nothing hits the docket, he will be back in court February 19th, 2:30 to proceed with his aspect of the charges. God knows the truth. Think things didn't go as they had planned, is what Cora said. I paid the rent. Next.
Thank you.
It's awesome. So, but the preliminary hearings for the other four is December 17th. It's a
They start
right
December
there.
17th.
Yep.
The judge has already blocked out the following days. So they're gonna start with Cole, I believe it is. They're just gonna go in order from there. So
Great.
or successively right from there. And we are gonna do our absolute best to be there for the entire
I'm
the
taking a rental.
preliminary hearing.
I'm
Yes,
taking a rental.
right.
So,
So we will be there. You know, they don't let court or cameras in the courtroom or anything, but we can do a live at the end of each day for you guys.
Yep.
Get as much video and picture as we possibly can.
Agreed. I just put in the chat under the Carrie Moody handle the burner number because it's kind of covered up there. If you have information, want to talk, want to share something, whatever it is, even if it's just to kind of vent away about your experience, that is a burner number. You can anonymously text that number. If you wanted to call it, you can, and just share whatever information or whatever your situation is. That is the way to do that. And it says, I think Paul, the night of the church play, changed his mind. It was Easter and hit him, and his belief in God ate at him. Then he had to tell his partner and get her and the kids safe. That could be. That's a good point. As far as I saw a comment, if his wife knew, it's hard to say who knew what. It can be easy to believe that everybody knew in his family and nobody knew in his family. I don't know how those conversations would have gone down, but there's definitely something that turned Paul around on this one. Not to, again, our conversations regarding Paul do not justify his actions, no matter who says what. They don't justify. Right. There is a difference, and sometimes it's a big, easy difference to see, and sometimes it's a blurred line. Justification and explanation are not the same thing. Just because you can explain it doesn't mean you're justifying it. It's very different.
Yes, and I always feel like I have to be so careful when I discuss my thoughts or feelings on Paul. And on our way home today, I was telling my husband this, and I said, "There's just I've got kids Paul's age. There's such a big part of me seeing him, seeing his body language and the way he's acted through this whole thing. There's a big part of me that feels bad for the guy, and then I have to turn around and say, what the hell? Like, he's a murderer. How do you feel bad at all? I am able to separate the two, that the deed he did was absolutely evil and horrific, and he deserves every bit of what gets thrown at him. But then there's also this part of me that's just like, why, man? Why? It's just hard. It's hard. I don't feel that way with the others. So, and maybe it's just because of his age. Maybe it's a baby face. Maybe I'm just gullible in that way. Who knows?
I think
But
it's his actual
it's my feelings on
I
it.
think it's his actual look of remorse and guilt and shame. Like you can tell, and I know in talking with some of the family today, they can see it. That does not mean they hope for the best for him.
Right. Exactly.
I know that there's a lot of prayer for him and the others. There's that's the most impressive thing I've seen from the community is the ask for prayers for the five in hopes that they find Jesus primarily. But I think that's where Paul is at, is he's realizing, oh crap, this was not my judgment call to make. That was not my judgment call. And I need to do something about that. So yeah, his demeanor definitely, it's all their demeanor speaks volumes. It's just that his speaks to his actions as a believer, I guess. Maybe they said Paul Grice confessed when he was arrested, not before, according to warrants and search warrants. CW mentioned him or in her statements. I'm not sure. I don't know when I know that he surrendered, and so that's probably all part of that one, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I also want to add real quick, and I don't think they'll mind me saying this. At least Veronica's side of the family, and that's just who we have the most contact with. So I can't speak for Jilian's. But Veronica's family they're happy, almost thrilled that they are joining their hearings and that Paul has taken these steps. Would you agree, Tara?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Oh, Run for Justice is asking a non-related question, which is probably a good segue because we've been at it for almost 2.5 hours.
Yes, we're about done.
When are we doing shenanigans? I am hoping to sneak in something tomorrow night. I don't know that the entire shenanigans crew will be there or if Carrie's feeling up to it. So I do need to get back to putting something out there. There was a death in my family, so things got slowed down considerably. We're just a week out from that funeral, so still kind of processing some things, but that's definitely something I was hoping to get to it tomorrow. If we go, you'll see if you have subscribed to the channel and you receive notifications, you'll see something about a live coming on. But I'm going to get back to putting more videos up, and it's going to come back around. We just had to take a breather to kind of cope with this. I'm not married legally, but he's basically my not husband. So she was my not mother-in-law. She was the one who passed, and I spent 10 days in the hospital with her prior to her passing, and we were all there with her when she took her final breath. So it's just a lot to try and take in, and then turn around and try to get back into this and work and everything. So it is coming. I'm hoping for tomorrow. If not, we are way back on the train next week for sure. And who's ever there is who's going to be talking. So
I'll be there.
That's what's going to happen. So it's coming, and I'm excited about it because it's going to talk about the things there at a more raw level than what we do here or in any other channels that are out there. So it will break some barriers. It's going to, throw caution to the wind. And so everybody's encouraged to, grab their favorite beverage and come hang out with us. We'll open the panel up. I think it'll be really, really good. So
I do too. And I put Tara's link in the chat, and it is also in the description of the video. So if you guys will go sub up there, I think it'll be a really cool place for us all.
I'm excited. Really, and there's been a bunch of subs. I went from, I think, 21 to, I think we're almost at 120 now. So you guys have been doing that. That's amazing. From what I understand, that's pretty awesome in YouTube world. So thank you for that support there, and for the support I see in the chat. Thank you very much. It was that's one of the things on shenanigans we'll get to talk about is the delicacy and the kind of the weirdness to that whole situation, if I can say that. So that'll be among the many things that we get to open up about there. And I expect there'll be a lot of YouTube community people who understand the dynamics in the YouTube area
Yes.
We will get to open up about a lot. So
And
go ahead.
Ashley, you are so right. She said, I think true crime needs to chill and laugh sometimes. Absolutely.
Yes.
These cases are deep, they're heartbreaking. They keep you up at night. You think about them nonstop. You're
Yes.
constantly looking for new documents. You're reading new documents. You're fielding messages. It's a lot. But we love what we do.
Yeah.
I think Tara and we are here for the victims and we're here for the families, period.
And you could see that today, Carrie. That was our first time in the courtroom to be with family, first time meeting them in person. And, we received such warm welcomes from the
Yes.
family and just from general supporters and even folks in the area that weren't supposed to show any kind of support, but found a sneaky way to do that. And I know you're listening right now, so I appreciate you for that. And so it definitely is very reassuring that we are on the right path. We've had a lot of opportunity to take this situation off the tracks that Carrie and I agreed upon. Carrie was already on those set of tracks long before I came along, and I totally bought into it. And so we feel very, very comfortable in how we have continued to present information and protect information in this case. And
Yes. We
very much
really do.
reduce trauma.
We absolutely try our hardest. We're always telling we don't know how to word something or because there's because there's just there's a lot more information. But we really protect that information. And when somebody confides in us, we're not repeating that. We're not spilling it all out there for the world. A lot of people just want to be able to talk about it. Maybe they knew the people. They might have been friends. There's a lot of things. So,
There is.
and I appreciate you guys in the chat there was 520 earlier before we started winding down. And I didn't see one bad comment in this chat.
Not once.
So thank you. That's how we like our chat to be.
Yes.
We don't want it to be, you guys know what we want.
Yes.
We don't want it to be crazy like that.
Naturally. You
Yes,
guys do it
it's naturally. And thank you so much.
And yes, Guymon, go ahead. If we can't answer it here, we'll take it to Shenanigans and answer it there. So by all means, please ask. And you guys can always ask questions again. If we can't do it here, we'll take it to the other channel
or the group,
Yes.
Facebook group, messages on Facebook. Any of those, we're happy to talk to you about whatever.
No, and that's not sensitive at all. No, he was not. And you can say, so we're at a point in the case where you can say the names. It's totally fine. If it's TA Tifany Adams, KM, she's referring to Kevin McIntire. No, he was not. I was looking for him today. We spotlighted Kevin a few months back to kind of just, when you're in true crime, rabbit holes will come for you. You don't have to find them. You will fall into one. And so we got so tired of all the rabbit holes. It's like, you know what? Let's just start taking some out. Kevin McIntire was a pretty popular one. And so I did a deep dive with him. Literally quite personally, I sent the man a message on Facebook, and to my surprise, he responded. The case was off limits because he is under gag order. So we went to talk about him. I told him I need to figure out basically if you're a good witch or are you a bad witch. For you Wizard of Oz lovers out there, you'll get that. And he's like, all right, I'll ask away. He didn't want to tell me if he's a good or bad guy. He's like, I'll let you make the decision since you're the one asking. And that's where we did that whole big live on him. Took a lot of heat for that live, but I stand by everything that I said. I did not tell Kevin I was coming into town today. I didn't get to tell a lot of people that I wanted to, but I knew that he wasn't showing up to the hearings necessarily either. So, but I can tell you that if we put it out there, which we did, they all knew we were coming. They know. They watch us. So if they watch everybody who's been involved, so. But that's a good question. Not sensitive at all. Will Kevin ever speak for himself, do you think? Yes, when it's safe to. I imagine that when it's safe to and when it's the right time. His family's been through a lot. There was a lot of unnecessary pressure and unnecessary activity directed towards him. So it was really hard for his family. They had to have a lot of difficult conversations with their young children about stranger danger type of things. So it's one thing to tell your kids, watch out
Yeah.
for people, don't talk to strangers. It's quite another thing to have to warn them that strangers will be walking up to them with a camera in their face.
Yep.
And these are the kinds of conversations that Kevin had to have with his two young children, and that's not okay. And that was at the there was instigation of that by others, and so
Right.
yeah, so that's when it's the right time. If he feels like it's absolutely necessary, I think he will. But there's been no point ever since we did that live.
No.
He and his family have noticed a big change, so I'm glad that worked out for him. I keep trying to hide. Is the video you did with him on? Yeah. Oh yeah. You'll see a thumbnail. I think is his name on the thumbnail, Carrie?
Yes.
It's been a couple months. Yeah, you can go through
Yes.
the. Yeah,
And it's not a video with him. The conversations occurred between Tara and him, and then our own research. We did put the facts out there, whether other people like it or not.
mhm.
It's not really for us to judge what we think or don't really think about him, but it was such a hot topic
Oh,
that we just felt that that was something we needed to do.
did you? Yeah.
Um, and, it's one of those, you can take it or leave it, but,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
the facts are the facts. So there, there's that.
Yeah, and I think he's a nice guy. He was very kosher, and his wife is adorable, and so I think they're good people. And thank you, Run for Justice, for your
Yes,
words.
thank you.
Our journalistic integrity. I actually do write for a paper. I'm a freelance writer, and so that's a really big compliment. So we appreciate that. Carrie and I are
Yeah.
both very much facts oriented. We appreciate a good theory based on what the facts are trying to tell us. That's what theories are when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we
Yeah, we
appreciate
definitely
that.
try to avoid the big rabbit holes, and like she said earlier, we don't have to go look. They'll come to us. But,
Yes.
does it affect the case? Does it affect the family? Does it affect the victims? And that's what we think about every time when we go to put out information. How
Exactly.
will it affect them? So some things just don't need to be said, and that's just the truth
Correct.
of it.
And there's a lot of information that Carrie and I hold to the chest, so to speak. It's just not time for it to come out. It's not ready. And in order to protect those that have been so kind as to trust us with that information, we don't put everything out there. And we want to be able to be trusted that way. So if there's times we say something, you're like, that makes no sense. That probably means we know something that we haven't put out there yet, but it'll come out in time. So the thumbnail, that is the image that you see when you first look at a video, and there's that picture that represents the video. That's called a thumbnail. That's a specifically designed image. So it's not like the automated just screenshot that the system can make for itself. We actually put together the image that you see, and so you should see something that says Kevin McIntire or something along those lines. And if you can't find it, just message me. I'll find it for you. No big deal at all.
Hey, God, just put it in the chat.
There.
That's
Hey,
the
she found it
exact
quick.
thumbnail. Yep, that's the exact video right there.
So we're very happy with that one. All about facts, can't stand fiction, just doesn't intrigue me. Not in these true crime cases, doesn't intrigue me either. That's I've become less impressed with media. There was somebody from Texas, a Texas station there today, the state of Texas. I think it was Amarillo. And after how I've seen other media use the Facebook group to exploit the group for their purposes, and they're not reporting quite the way that I think is in the best interest of the case and those involved. They're just reporting what they report. They don't have relationships like we do. So it's hard for me to get behind those
And
folks.
sometimes it's hard not to want to correct it all.
No.
But we don't. I mean, we don't correct everything at all, but we just hope that the facts that we present you speak for themselves. And then everybody has the right to make their own judgments, their own opinions, and their own theories.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I am exhausted. And I know Tara's got to be, she only was home for about 30 minutes before we started the live.
And after the deal with the car today,
yes, and then all of that stress added, and so we are just really tired, but we will be back for the preliminary hearing in December. We will absolutely be there for Paul's, and all the support that you guys give us just being here, liking the video, subscribing means an awful lot to us. So
Yes, it
we
does.
appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much, you guys. And like I said, the number was up there. I think it's in the description too. It's in the Facebook. So if there's anything you guys want but don't want to put yourselves out there, that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, just contact us on Facebook. And if you're a good sleuther like we are, you can find my cell phone. It's out there in the world. So good luck to you.
Right. All right. I think that's it. You guys were wonderful as always. Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank
And,
you very much. This has been awesome. For all the
and then
wrong reasons. But
we'll get Tara to do her video live on her channel real soon. Watch.
yes, we will. Yes, I'm ready. I need to move forward. You guys
All
have a
right.
great evening. Thank
Yes,
you.
you guys all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Good night.
We'll talk to you soon.